Just touch it one time.
All right, good evening. It is 6:00 p.m. and I call to order the September 7th, 2021 Board of Trustees Board Workshop. Each year, the superintendent and administration provides a report to the board on the district's strategic plans, its progress, and goals for the current year. The district is in compliance with South Carolina Freedom of Information Act by notifying the media of the date, time, and place of the meeting. The district tapes the meeting for accuracy in preparing the minutes. At this time, I yield the floor to Dr. Brent Powers to lead the Pledge of Allegiance.
If everybody will stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I have a motion at this time that we enter into general session?
Madam Chair, that we move into general session.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Henson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the motion carries. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Madam Chair, move we approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the motion carries. All right, at this time, I am going to turn our agenda over to Dr. Little, who is going to lead us in our board workshop.
Josh, if we could get the projector going, just so we're all on the same page of the PowerPoint. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Tonight, we're going to show really some of our most important work. I'm very proud of the things that we're going to show you tonight, which is really a review of what has been what was probably one of our most challenging years ever. And I believe that last year, while we may have had all those challenges of last year also is a great example of some of the most impactful work that has been done and really thoughtful work that's been done in our school district. What you're going to see tonight is not an exhaustive list of all the work that has been done, but we believe it's the work that captures the essence of what we've been doing throughout the course of the last year. I do think we're going to show and demonstrate a lot of that adaptive change that we've had, but I think it's important to also note that in this moment, as we're getting ready to reflect on this work, that this could not have been done without the amazing staff at our schools that came to work every day in a challenging environment that was changing rapidly, very stressful experience for everybody involved. And they did so willingly, they did so purposefully, they did so because they care about our students, they care about our staff, they care about their colleagues, and they care about our community. So I'm very grateful to the work that was been done in our buildings each and every day. And I'd also like to say that I'm incredibly proud of the people who are sitting back here in central services that represent just so much thoughtful work about, in the face of adversity, about how we can best serve our kids and make an impact in our community. So I just want to start there. We are going to, today's going to be a little different from in the past because we're going to revisit our strategic plan on the 21st and go in because there's some changes that have taken place because of this year and what it means for us moving forward. So it's going to be kind of like tonight's going to be the big part, and then we're going to do some strategic plan specific work at our next board meeting. But so with that being said, I'd like to introduce Dr. Shane Phillips, who's going to walk us through what is a very odd year in terms of standardized testing because of a number of the things that took place. So Dr. Phillips, if you kind of talk to us about that, and we'll get started.
Okay. Y'all hear me okay? All right. I've got my water here because I'm going to be up here for
a hot second. Okay. Good evening. It's my pleasure tonight to present a summary of student achievement data for the 2020-2021 school year. As you're all aware, we are coming off another disrupted school year that has affected the students and staff of our district in many different ways. The data I present to you today are but one measure in the journey of our students and staff, and should in no way be considered a comprehensive evaluation of the learning that occurred this year. Along the way, I will detail some of the limitations of this year's data. First, a note about the end-of-course examination program. As you know, the EOC exams were canceled in the spring of 2020. Furthermore, the state, while returning to the mandatory administration of the EOC exams, recognized the wide variability of educational experiences taking place around the state in the 2020-2021 school year. Consequently, the department granted districts flexibility in the amount of weight the EOC exams carried on a student's final grade. Our district opted to reduce the weight from 20% to 10% of the final grade and hold students harmless for the score. In other words, students had to take the test, but the test only counted in the final grade if it would improve that grade. As a result, we will not be reporting EOC scores tonight because the data are not representative of what our students know and are able to do. In order to get a grasp on what students do know and are able to do, we designed our academic recovery plan to use our interim assessment systems to identify gaps in learning for these students this fall so that teachers can provide appropriate instruction to close those gaps. We begin tonight with English Language Arts. Shown here is a summary of the percentage of students at all grades who met or exceeded standards on the SC Ready ELA assessment. As you'll see in this graph and many of the graphs that follow, there are no 2020 scores and there is a drop from 2019 to 2021. It's important to note that a variety of factors may have contributed to this decline. First, the effects of the pandemic disruption was felt in all subjects across the state and nation. Secondly, one of the effects of the pandemic was that fewer students actually took the assessment, even though our district is rapidly growing. With the implementation of a consistent instructional model, you can see that in the years leading up to the pandemic, our ELA scores were steadily increasing. Even with a slight decline this year, our scores still came in higher than our 2017 levels. Here's how the performance of Lexington District One students compares to the state on ELA. As you can see here, our district outperformed the state. This is a consistent pattern over the years. I mentioned before that fewer students actually took the exam. This table shows that 1,320 fewer students, that's about 10% fewer, students took the exam in 2021 than in 2019. This is a common theme across all tests. Concern about the virus, transportation issues, other concerns resulted in substantially fewer students being tested. This lower participation takes away from the comprehensive value of the test results. We will look closely at interim assessment results this fall at all levels in order to get a more accurate picture of our students' strengths and areas of opportunity. Here are the mean and standard deviations for the ELA's SC Ready test. Again, because of the disruption and the lower test participation, we have to take many of these results with a grain of salt. The end of course exam has moved to English 2 now. It used to be English 1. And with those scores being questionable this year, a close look at course grades is appropriate. This graph shows that 90% of students received a passing grade in English 2, with 78% receiving a C or higher. The pass rate is very comparable to that of pre-pandemic levels of 2019. It's actually 1 point higher. The C or higher rate for the past year is higher, but still reasonably comparable at +8 points. All right, moving on to math. Here are the percentages of students meeting or exceeding standard on the SC Ready math exam. Again, we see the decline after the COVID disruption. However, we also see that while we were making some improvement prior to the disruption, the growth is relatively flat. Across the state, the pandemic appeared to impact math achievement more than ELA. Statewide in ELA, grade level declines averaged 2.8 points, while in math, grade level declines averaged 7.9 points. Prior to the pandemic, we recognized the need for a more consistent instructional model in math, similar to that implemented in ELA. To that end, the district had just begun implementing Math Workshop when the pandemic hit. As part of our academic recovery plan, we will be addressing mathematics achievement and specifically middle school math as a priority. One of these strategies is to continue to implement Math Workshop in order to improve math performance. We will also be providing targeted professional learning opportunities around high leverage math instructional strategies. Again, while we did see a drop in math achievement on SC Ready, we still continue to outperform the state. And again, we saw a substantial decrease in the number of students taking the exam. So again, about 10% fewer this year than in 2019. And here are your summary statistics for mathematics by grade. So the pattern of post-pandemic achievement is also evident here in the high school Algebra 1 grade distributions. In Algebra 1, we saw a pass rate of 86% compared to 90% in English 2. Also, the percent scoring C or higher in Algebra 1 was 75% compared to 78% in English 2. Part of this could be because of the pandemic impact, but part of it could also be attributed to the educational maturity of the students who are typically enrolled in these classes. As you know, Algebra 1 are typically 8th graders or freshmen, every now and then a 10th grader or two, while your English 2 kids are 10th and sometimes 11th graders. Or your high-flying 9th graders as well.
Is this across all levels of Algebra 1?
Yes, just the algebra. Well, not like you're talking about like introduction to algebra and foundations. This is just the Algebra 1 course.
Okay, so it would include like a
It has
Algebra 1 honors, Algebra 1.
It includes
college prep?
all of that. Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
The pass rates were identical to 2019 prior to the pandemic. The percent scoring C or higher was a bit higher this year, plus 10 points. All right. Science SC Ready is only given in grades 4 and 6 now. And that's important, and I can talk about that if you'd like. Similar to math, we saw a drop in performance after the pandemic, but also somewhat stagnant growth prior to the disruption. Over the past few years, we have prioritized professional learning around literacy and math. Moving forward, we continue to layer on subject areas now that teachers are becoming more proficient in our established instructional models. This will allow us to focus on deeper levels of learning in other disciplines. Last year, we continued to outperform the state overall. However, the percent of students exceeding standard was about equal to that of the state. And again, we had substantially fewer students take the science exam compared to 2019. And this time it was about 14% fewer students. A difference of about 600 kids. Again, here are our summary statistics. Grade distributions in Biology 1, however, indicate high levels of achievement, with 91.3% passing the course and about 82% achieving a C or higher. These rates are pretty comparable to the pre-pandemic rates of 2019. The pass rate was slightly lower at -3 points, and the C or higher rate was slightly higher at +2 points. So we have no good standardized test data available for social studies this year. Grade distributions in U.S. history courses suggest high levels of achievement with 93.1% of students passing the course and 91% scoring C or higher. Note that these are 11th grade students who are more mature and more invested in school. Pass rates were very similar to those of 2019 at +1 point, and C or higher rates were a bit higher at +8 points. Okay, this is our 4-year cohort adjusted graduation rate trend compared to that of the state over the past few years. I want to point out 2017 and 2018. In 2017, districts were allowed to remove students who transferred to adult education in a diploma track from their graduation cohort. However, in 2018, that rule was changed. Notice a substantial drop in graduation rates both in our district and at the state level. This year, in the wake of the pandemic disruption, our graduation rate is down slightly from 2020. However, we still graduated 90% of our students on time even after this cohort endured 2 years of pandemic disruption. So, I'd like to take a minute here to talk about the 4-year adjusted cohort graduation rate. We're proud to be a district that parents trust with students who are served in special education. But we have to also accept that based on the way the graduation rate is calculated, 100% graduation rate is impossible, and even 95% is incredibly difficult to achieve because these students are counted in our cohort, but since they do not earn a diploma, they count against us even though they complete a course of study. The current calculation method does not honor the accomplishment of these students. We are also proud that we have an adult education program that serves the needs of students for whom a traditional high school track may not be appropriate. However, if a student transfers to adult education and earns a GED, they count against us in the graduation rate, even though many of them complete a course of study. If we look at students who actually complete a course of study in our schools, our success rate is actually about 91.5%. I think this is more reflective of our school's ability to help students succeed. Now we move on to the progress on our strategic plan goals. As Dr. Little mentioned, we will be talking a little bit more in depth about the strategic plan and our plans to revise and modify some of these goals based on what has happened as a result of the pandemic on your September 21st meeting. However, for now, for your reference, any cell with a green background indicates progress over the prior year. Red text indicates that we did not meet whatever goal it was that we set. Blue text indicates that the goal was achieved. There's no doubt that progress on our strategic plan suffered as a result of the pandemic. As you'll see on the next few slides, we were making good progress in many areas. For example, in elementary grades, prior to the pandemic, we were trending in the right direction prior to 2019-2020. Most of the goals shown here are end-of-year measures, and as we are all aware, those measures were completely thrown off by the onset of COVID in 2020. State tests were canceled, and true end-of-the-year text level assessments were not able to be conducted appropriately. Following the spring of 2020, we began to see the effects of that lost time. We have recognized this and have designed our academic recovery plan to address the gaps that arose over the past couple of years. Another thing that we recognize is that our stated goal of reducing the number of students in tiers 2 and 3 of intervention may not be appropriate given the current reality. Because of the pandemic disruption, our students need more intervention and not less. Therefore, instruction will be working to revise this goal into something more appropriate for the circumstances. At middle school, again, you can see that we were making some progress prior to the pandemic. In 18-19, we actually surpassed our interim goal in ELA and made some progress in math. We also saw reductions in the number of students in higher levels of intervention. After the pandemic, though, we will need to recover in all of these areas. Again, it is appropriate to rethink the intervention goal given the times. At the high school level, you can see that we made some progress before, during, and after the disruption. In 2019 and 2020, we were showing great gains in the percentage of ninth grade students on track for graduation and progress in 10th graders on track. However, both declined in 2020, 2021. We are consistently growing in the percentage of our juniors who are on track for an on-time graduation. However, we are falling short of our 98% goal. We also continue to improve in the percentage of students meeting college and career readiness benchmarks. You can see our graduation rate here, which we talked about earlier. There was a concerning decline in the percent of students entering higher education, military careers, or obtaining industry certification. This is in part due to students not taking certification exams due to unavailability or because of COVID concerns. I spoke to Mr. Myers about this just to verify, and he clarified that many of the CTE courses were made available to students in Lula, but many of them did not come to the school and face-to-face to take advantage of those, and so they weren't able to complete those sort of prerequisites for the certification exam. Oh, he also indicated that we were back on track this year. All right, so the next couple of slides deal with our gifted populations. Rigorous course enrollment and equity continues to grow at all grade levels, while dual enrollment numbers continue to increase at our high schools. Combined enrollment in AP, IB, and dual enrollment courses was the one decline we saw in this area last year. Part of this could be due to the limited catalog of advanced courses we were able to support for Lula students. The effects of the pandemic were no stranger to our gifted students. The percentages of students exceeding standard were steadily increasing before the pandemic in all subjects. Following the disruption, there was a decrease in these percentages across the board. The one exception to that was in middle school ELA, where we actually showed an increase in students exceeding standard over the 2019 administration. Pass rates on AP tests slightly declined as well. Chronic absenteeism became a much bigger problem over the past 2 years. Online learning and hybrid models presented new challenges for student attendance and accountability. Discipline has improved substantially over the past 2 years, probably due to models introduced to combat the pandemic and an emphasis on student advocacy and social emotional learning. Here is that same information about chronic absenteeism for high school, and the same trend holds true. Finally, we did see some improvement in perceptions about staff resources for professional development and the ability of teachers to solve problems in innovative ways. However, we did see declines in satisfaction with the social and physical environments of the schools and homeschool relations. Again, as Dr. Little mentioned, we will be revisiting the strategic plan at the September 21st meeting to talk about how we would like to revise and improve the plan. Whew. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Dr. Phillips, did you see any variation between our Lula kids and our face-to-face instruction kids? Were there any themes in that?
Nothing super substantial here and there. And I can get you that data if you would like, but certainly there was some variability there, but nothing substantial that I can recall.
And then any theories why ELA seemed to continue to progress versus mathematics? It seems like with Khan Academy, and I'm not, as a non-educator,
Yeah.
I don't know. I just find that interesting.
So, and I can defer to Mary some on this, but I would say that having a consistent instructional model across the board was very helpful along that, which is what we were moving to in math when the pandemic hit. So we had the Lucy Calkins units of study, reading, writing, am I saying this right? Yeah, reading and writing workshop was consistent across all our schools at multiple grade levels, right? But math, we were just starting to implement that. And so I think that's a big difference in that. Also, and Hillary can probably speak to this, the nature of mathematics, with ELA, you tend to see sort of the same things year after year with just a little bit more depth. With math, though, you're building and building and building and building, and the content changes a good bit, particularly once you get up into late middle and early high school. So
Yeah, the standard deviation on those stayed the same versus ELA, it spread. So that told me some kids did well with the hybrid model and continued to learn, whereas other ones fell behind.
Yes,
Versus
absolutely.
math, everyone struggled, so.
yes.
Obviously, we've seen a slide, a regression, if you will. Is there a time frame we can put on that? Just based off the trends that you see? I mean, is it a?
You mean a time frame for
Well,
recovering?
well, not even recovery, just we took a step back as if we always talk about the summer slide, but obviously this is on a much grander scale. Is it a 12-month, 18-month, 2-year, 3-year? I mean, if you look at just the pure numbers, it would suggest that we kind of seem to trend back to 2018 numbers, which would put you in that 24, 30-month, 36-month time frame.
So again, this is simply my opinion of it.
Sure.
So take that for what it's worth. I would say, given a focus on those things that we find given in our academic recovery plan, if we look closely at those gaps that were, developed over the pandemic years, if we can focus on those things, I don't think it'll take as long to build it back up. I'm generally an optimist, so that's sort of the way I see it. But it is going to take a lot of focus on those areas in order to get us there, and some very hard work by our teachers, which they're already putting in.
And of course, it speaks to the need to do the interim assessments so we get a much clearer picture about what the gaps are.
Right.
Because of the flaws in the standardized portions of it for the last couple of years, that really can't tell us where the gaps are. The gaps are going to be identified in this interim assessment.
Right, and I'll mention something about end of course along those lines. End of course is a fine assessment. However, we get next to nothing back at the high school level and those upper level middle school kids. We get next to nothing back at the standard level as far as information about what kids actually know and are able to do. All we get is a number and a letter grade. And we've talked as testing nerds to our testing nerd group around the state about, when can we get some of that standard level data? Because we get nothing out of this to be able to help improve students' learning. What we do get with our interim assessments is data down to the indicator level that says, hey, you're good at this, but you're not very good at this. Let's work on this part, and here are some ways that you can do it. So that's why we're leaning really heavily on those interim assessments in our academic recovery plan this year.
Can I interrupt just a second? Mary, would you kind of highlight, remind the board about our academic recovery plan? I know we've talked about it in the past, but kind of in light of Dr. Phillips' conversation.
Absolutely, and we are looking forward to that interim assessment data. Our third goal actually in the academic recovery plan depends on that interim assessment data for us to identify those gaps and then really plan for what we're going to do this year. We're also going to use that data to, as Dr. Phillips alluded to earlier, sort of reestablish our goals and do what you just said, Dr. Guyton, sort of outline what it's going to take for us to get back to where we need to be. So that's the third goal. The first goal is in the area of early literacy and really thinking about especially our students with special needs and our multilingual learners, but early literacy across the board and what we can do to make sure we have those foundational skills in place that may have been missed these past few years. And our data from last spring let us know that we need to really focus on that. The second goal is in the area of middle school math. And we're going to have to be really focused on that. And we have Hillary Morgan with us tonight, and she may want to speak to that a little bit more. And then a fourth goal in the area of social and emotional learning.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the greatest tragedy outside of the obvious that can come from this pandemic is that we return to normal. Because we've gone through probably the greatest behavioral and psychological and emotional trial that pretty much every generation will have seen to some degree. And so in our rush to quote unquote get back to normal, you kind of have to take a step back and say, well, was that normal? Is that normal really worth getting back to? And so you bring up end of course exams. 20% just, I can tell you from sitting on this side, when I walk in an exam room and it's April, May, I'm starting to have discussions about anxiousness, anxiety, those kind of things. I call January my senior month because that's about the time my seniors start to come in. They're graduating high school. They haven't quite got that plan together, and their depression and anxiety is through the roof. And so I think there's an obvious tie between the social and emotional learning that occurs and end of course exam. You know, and if nothing else, we may have learned that maybe if it's not benefiting us other than giving us a grade, why does it have to be? Why do we have to hinge so much on it at one time? You know, can we stratify that with more interim assessments and different things like that to give us a better indicator? And so I would hope as we have gone through this pandemic that we will use this information, and the normal we get back to would be the desirable normal, you know, from what we've learned. It's good information though, thank you.
And I would add, Dr. Guyton, and building on what Dr. Phillips said about the end of course exams, I mean, I haven't ever really thought about it this way, but as you were talking, I mean, really, especially for the high school, the biology one, the U.S. history, those are exit exams. There's nothing for the student in that assessment other than it gets them out of that class. They get credit for the class. And any data you might get or information on those students, they've finished that course. They may never take another U.S. history class again. And so what you're doing is that data is only going to help the teachers figure out, well, where did I miss instruction for the next group? And so I can see this is really kind of shining a lens on, I mean, to me, the end of course exam, it's measuring our schools and our teachers, not our students. Are they being given what they need to be done with this class? And you know, if it's not benefiting the students anything other than either pulling their grade up or not harming it, you wonder where the benefit is, because it is so high stress. And you know, and that it's that sword hanging over these students' head, especially, you know, you don't want to have to repeat biology 1, or you don't want to have to retake that stressful test. And so much pressure is put on a test that really has not no value, because you want a student to be able to take a cumulative test. I think that's important. But is that value worth what we're creating in this pressure chamber for these students when they take these tests? That's just, I've lived through a lot of EOCs as a parent, and they're extremely stressful.
They are. And to that end, my office preaches a lot to people about the use of assessment, not as an evaluative tool, but as an instructional tool. And that whole structure of end of course flies in the face of that a little bit, which is why I'm happy that we're able to use our interim assessments for, at least for ELA and math. Now, we don't have a lot to go on for science and social studies along those lines. And I mentioned earlier that there was an issue with science being only in grades 4 and 6. And so when you think about that, Grade 7 is life science on the standards. So the only other time that you see anything related to biology used to be on 7th grade SC Pass science. But now that's gone. You just got 4 and 6. And so we have nothing instructionally and we get good information from SC Pass and SC Ready as far as instructionally at the standard level, right? Here's what our kids know, here's the standards they know, here's the ones they don't, here's what we need to work on. Once they get up to biology, they have nothing to look back on to see what are the gaps that need to be filled, which I think is an interesting sort of wrinkle there.
I have a few things just to kind of piggyback off of what you said when you're talking about the stress for the students. It's also stressful for the teachers too, because these are not assessments that the teachers are writing. And I remember my first year teaching Algebra 1, and I had a strong student after the test said, "Miss Henson, what is pitch?" This is an Algebra 1 class. "What is pitch?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" The problem wanted them to find the slope of the roof, but I had not taught him that vocabulary word. So he was struggling he knew how to find slope, but it was just a disconnect with the vocabulary. So, there's good things and bad things. So, questions though. The middle level math that you guys were talking about, can you elaborate on that? Or you're going to talk about it next meeting?
We are going to talk about it next meeting, but
Okay.
it's fine. We can go ahead and, Hillary, do you mind giving an overview of what we learned through our data and our plan?
Hold on, Hillary. Hold on just a second. Can we get her on?
Thank you. Is this better? So we really saw areas in all domains in mathematics, all key concepts. So what we really want to refocus and kind of is on our instructional model, so that we're able to provide students and teachers with structures to allow for small group instruction so that they can assess students, determine their strengths and areas that they might need to improve on. We also are going to focus on, and have been, on that shift from heavy procedural and algorithmic approaches to mathematics to developing those procedures from the conceptual understanding. So really a good balance and providing opportunities for students to engage in meaningful mathematics and apply the mathematics, and focusing on those low floor, high ceiling tasks where they have multiple entry points where all students can find success, whether it be at the concrete level, the abstract level, the representation level, really just giving them a very firm understanding of the mathematics.
So for our middle school teachers, are they all teaching in their content area?
Like certification-wise?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I know that's something that a lot of districts are struggling with right now. You talked about for RTI, like Tier 2 and Tier 3 for our elementary literacy. Have we refilled all of those positions? I know last year, one school, for example, had 4 RTI teachers and 3 were pulled to teach grade level classes. And so there was only 1 at that school that was trying to meet the needs for all the students.
Yes, well, do you want to go first, and then I'll talk about this? Yeah. So all of the positions, unless Ms. Price tells me I'm wrong, are filled. But the reality is we are trying our best to provide those services this year. They are still having to cover some classes because of the low number of substitutes that we have available and the number of teacher absences. So it is our goal and it is our hope that we can not do that much longer, but in our current context, we are having to, I hope less than last year, but it is still happening. And we think it's vitally important to be able to offer those services. So.
And Dr. Powers, I'll be happy to get some more information on the Lula stuff for you, just so I can make sure you have what you need. All right, y'all aren't done with me yet. All right, so very quickly, I'd like to talk about the progress on the Power Skills portfolio. So I am one of the co-chairs of that committee, and we've been busy over the summer. So what we've done since our last update on the Power Skills portfolio is we contract in the district with a group called Hanover Research, which in my office, they are my heroes because they help me with literature reviews and surveys and all kinds of nice stuff. The other thing they're able to do is go out and look at current research and help us to develop measurement tools for certain things. So we worked with Hanover Research to develop rubrics that specifically measure our power skills. And these are all based on current research that is available in the field. They are specific to grade bands. So we have a early elementary, an elementary, a middle, and a high school set of rubrics for the power skills. We're working now to convert those to something called a single point rubric, which is just a sort of more portable and easy to use rubric that can be used in like walkthroughs of classrooms to measure opportunities for accessing these power skills or learning these power skills in our schools. And we worked with Hanover Research to develop infographics, again, specific to grade band, that show examples and language around these power skills. And they have them at each of those levels, and they use grade appropriate language at each of those levels, and those will be able to be posted around the school. Coming up, we will be reconvening the Power Skills Committee very soon to review and revise those rubrics. And then we have a draft of a scoring and reporting system. We're going to refine that, kind of tune it up, and then we're going to pilot this with a school at each level in the fall just to see how that measurement system and that scoring system works, if it is, accurate and valid and reliable, and then we'll update you guys again on that. One more time.
Dr. Phillips, will you just remind the board what's the question that we're trying to answer with the rubric?
So what we're trying to answer with this measurement tool is the opportunity to grow in each of the power skills. And that is not necessarily an easy thing to measure because power skills can be learned in a variety of ways, right? So it could be athletics, it could be the arts, it could be clubs or in class, or taking a higher level class versus a lower level class. And so what we are trying to do is gauge at each school the opportunity to get those power skills versus how much of a power skill each kid has gotten, right? Because that's even harder to figure out. Does that make sense? Other questions? All right. Thank you, everybody.
Good evening. Try that one more time. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you. So I have the privilege to present on the All Means All Committee. So I serve as a co-chair along with Gloria Jenkinson at Beechwood Middle School, and also Dr. Chris Gillespie, who is the ESOL and RTI coordinator. So I'm a former coach, taught English, high school English, and I was a assistant varsity boys basketball coach, and I want to frame it this way because I love sports and love athletics. And even as a good teacher, you're always looking for ways to get better. So that's the purpose of the All Means All Committee. It's not that we believe that we're not excelling, that we're not doing things well. We just want to see how we can get better. So even after the best game that we might have coached and had a great victory, we're always going to look at film after the game and say, okay, sure, we won the game, but if we don't fix these poor habits, if we don't fix these things that we notice, we're not going to be prepared for the playoffs, or we're not going to be prepared to compete for a championship. So we look at this the same way, that we're doing things well. We want to see how we can do things even better. So as you see, the goal is to better meet the objectives of our mission and vision. And as you also see on the screen, you see the questions. So we took an inquiry stance. We're not trying to go into this thinking, here's what we need to fix, or here's what we want to work on. We want to ask questions to figure out what is it that we're doing well, why are we doing those things well, and how can we improve in areas that maybe we're not doing as well as we'd like to. So all of those questions are rooted in our mission and vision, looking for ways to cultivate that caring community for all learners, thinking about ways to remove obstacles and barriers for student learner outcomes. Also thinking about how do we enhance and develop our critical thinkers, and then finally, how do we know that we're empowering students to design the future, and if we know how we're doing that, we can even scale that even more. So of the committee, I serve as co-chair on, we have a wide variety of people who serve on this committee, and it's broken down into 3 smaller groups based on interests. And one thing, after we reviewed all data, Group 1 decided, okay, our goal, based on data we've reviewed, is trying to decide how we can increase the opportunity, knowledge, and access to rigorous and advanced coursework, which is what something Dr. Phillips mentioned that was in the strategic plan as well. So these are connected and aligned with our strategic plan. Group 2 wanted to work closely with refining those practices to recruit and retain a more diverse teaching staff. So not only do we want to find more people to bring to our district, high quality educators, we want to figure out how can we keep them. We don't want to lose them, and that's going to help Ms. Price here in the Human Resources Department. Group 3, we wanted to identify how we can create and develop that environment where students thrive. So Dr. Guyton mentioned a lot of the social emotional learning, as well as Dr. Phillips. We're focusing on those things that help students feel a sense of belonging in their classrooms, in their schools, in their community, so that they can even excel beyond what they thought they could do. And it's been a great experience to work with so many people in so many different departments, and for us to take this inquiry stance over months. We started last school year, and now we're getting ready to approach the action planning phase. So we're not in the steps to say this is what we're going to do just yet, but that's where the phase we're entering in this fall. At this time, I will take questions.
Can you give us a feel for the enrollment and how that's either stayed constant or declined or increased because of all the COVID changes?
Sure. When you say enrollment, what area are you specifically thinking about?
You're referring to the rigorous coursework?
Rigorous coursework, okay.
Piece.
So that is, when you think about numbers, whether it's in elementary school, so thinking about how is Eagles communicated to families and how do students have access to Eagles. You think about middle school, how are students finding out how to try to attempt an honors course like Algebra 1 or English 1 in 8th grade, and then when you get into high school, how are students learning more about advanced placement, the IB program, honors courses, dual enrollment courses. So those are some of the things that we looked at as far as enrollment numbers and figured out, okay, the students who are there, how did they get there? Was it counselors? Was it parents who already had opportunity knowledge? So those are things that we reviewed to decide that we want to work on this particular goal.
Can you give them a little information about dual enrollment?
Sure.
Specifically?
So dual enrollment, and I'll talk about this a little bit later as well, but we have some amazing partners that we work with. We work with Piedmont Technical College, Midlands Technical College, and also USC Sumter. And so over time, it's really grown. So I started my position last February and had to learn a lot very quickly in the midst of a pandemic. But what I found is that our students are excelling with dual enrollment opportunities and using that to enter college as sometimes sophomores, if not a little bit further, maybe even second semester sophomores, by getting so much coursework done. And many of them have a combination of advanced placement credit hours that they've earned and also the dual enrollment courses. That's really doubled in the last 3 to 4 years. So in 2017, 2018, there were about 350 students across the district who were taking at least one dual enrollment course. As of today, we're at about 700. And so as that grows, the demand and the logistics and the planning and all the things that it takes to communicate and support those students, those needs are changing every day. And so we're working very hard. We actually even just hired another person to assist us with dual enrollment who works with me at Gilbert High School to support students to make sure that progress monitoring doesn't fall through the cracks. So if there are students with an early alert who are not doing as well, we make sure we reach out to them to intervene before it gets too bad for them.
And I may have stepped on his later slide. Sorry about that. I'm sorry, Brandon.
No problem.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
That's a good question. We need to.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Lexington One family, and Dr. Little, I want to spend just a couple of minutes of your time updating you on the progress of SELF, which stands for Supportive Enrichment for Lexington One families. I'm pleased to update you about the progress we have made in building and beginning to implement this program. As a reminder, I wanted to share with you a quick overview of SELF. SELF is designed to cultivate relationships with support staff members and their families and provide their middle and high school age children with career awareness opportunities, academic and social emotional enrichment, and access to services, learning experiences, and programs. The design and implementation of SELF is wrapped around these goals. We want to support students and families in the transition from elementary to middle school. We also wish to offer consistent access over time to academic and career enrichment opportunities, including camps, field trips, workshops, and so on, throughout the year as well as during the summer months. Sustained partnerships with parents and/or families and strong relationships with students are key, and we want to make sure that we continue to improve relationships with these students and their families. Another goal of SELF is the recruitment and retention of support staff members. This is very important. The implementation of this program will aid in meeting these goals and others as they arise. This is our hope. So to give you a little bit of information about our first cohort, we began this cohort really kicking it off last year. We prioritized students of our food service, maintenance, and transportation staff, 3 of our most valuable support staff groups. We plan to expand the offering to additional support staff groups, but wanted to start small and learn through the implementation of our first cohort. It is designed to be sustained support over these 7 years of schooling from 6th grade through 12th grade and launch a high school senior into college or career, a goal aligned with our strategic plan. This past fall, we recruited students for our first cohort. We held a virtual kickoff meeting via Zoom, and students and family members took part in this. And this summer, we began programming and have had ongoing communication with families and students. We also introduced school-level administrators to the SELF program in the spring. This fall, we made sure that our administrators and other school-level stakeholders knew which of their students were in the program and provided them with a profile sheet for ongoing communication between the program coordinator, who is Ms. Susan Helton, and others in the school who are involved in each child's journey in Lexington One. This may include career specialists, school counselors, advocacy teachers, mentors, etc. So to talk a little bit about the summer program, we were really excited. The programming is aligned to power skills as well as career clusters and student interest. As I said, this is Miss Susan Helton, who's up there with Dr. Little at one of our summer events. She's worked tirelessly to provide experiences for SELF students and families to take part in. One example highlighted on the screen, this July, students and families had the opportunity to take part in a Columbia Fireflies game. Each participant received a hat, a food voucher, and free admission to the game, which happened to be a double header, so free admission to 2 games. We sat on the third base line, and between the games, students and family members attended a workshop led by individuals who are in the hospitality and tourism industry who work at Segra Park, the home of the Fireflies. It was a lot of fun. We had a great time. On a side note, the Fireflies were up against my hometown, the Augusta Green Jackets, which are housed in North Augusta. So if that's not confusing. But they beat us both times. I also wanted to take a moment and share some upcoming events for SELF. We had planned to do a face-to-face escape room at Escape Plan Columbia, but due to the pandemic, we've had to shift this to a virtual escape room experience. Students will take part in this soon. In September, we're going to be offering a Parent University virtual workshop. And in October, Ms. Helton has planned a trip to Mission Lexington, but again, because of the pandemic, we're going to go ahead and make a shift, and we will keep you posted on that. But we're trying to plan at least one event monthly that can be kind of a community event. We've also got ongoing support for students. We're continuing to connect them with academic coaches, mentors, and job shadowing opportunities. I've been talking with families recently. I'm amazed by the aspirations of these young people. They're interested in things like forensic psychology, neonatal nursing, crisis negotiation, and starting their own businesses. Some of these things I wasn't even sure without watching some television programs, what they were. But it's very, very interesting. And we're going to continue to work to connect these students with job shadowing opportunities and allow them to see firsthand what these professionals do on a day-to-day basis. Finally, we are working to train our mentors in motivational interviewing this November and December. So we'll have some more information on that pretty soon. They can help students set goals for themselves and reflect on how their choices impact their personal and academic lives. So a little bit about our current cohort. We currently have 26 6th grade through 12th grade students participating in SELF. They represent each of the staff member groups that I spoke of earlier, our food service, maintenance, and transportation staff. These have been identified. We have 11 females and we have 12 males, 5 middle school students and 18 high school students. Some of our middle school students from last year went to high school. So, and some of our high school students from last year graduated. But we do have 9 of these students that are seniors this year, so we're really excited about that. And all of our Lexington One feeder patterns are represented. So I wanted to share just a little bit about what we've learned and what has been confirmed by this. First and foremost, relationships matter. We know this, and it has been just further confirmed by this process. Something that has been confirmed is that ongoing relationships are key. It's important to continue to build relationships, to be a good listener and understand that everybody's story is important and our differences make us stronger. Something else that's been confirmed is that our schools are providing some amazing support already. Opportunities for students to excel and for their families to take part. I've heard very little from folks, and I've talked to every single parent in this group and several of the students. I've heard very little from folks who are feeling like schools are not responsive to their needs. This is an on top of responsiveness piece that SELF is providing. We're very fortunate to have teachers, administrators, and staff members who care about students and families and their well-being. Thirdly, this program is modeled after a program at Wake Forest School of Medicine. Our design has actually shifted to an even more personalized approach for our students and for our families. For example, in the original program, they would have weekly study sessions that were held once a week, face-to-face, and you would have a mentor or an academic coach that would meet with you. Our program is actually based on really evaluating the needs and wants of each of the participants and their families and providing opportunities to connect them with some of our existing resources. And if a resource doesn't exist, we find them what we can. Finally, we're continuing to seek out enrichment opportunities to meet the specific needs and wants of our students through creating partnerships with other organizations and stakeholders in the community. I will say that the disruption has caused a disruption for the program as well. I would love to say that we've had lots of face-to-face opportunities. I feel like mentoring and academic coaching is something that in a face-to-face setting is going to be most effective. That's what the research says too from the experts that I've spoken with. We're going to continue to press on, but I didn't want you to think that we hadn't made progress, because we have. So plans for Cohort 2, as we begin thinking about our next cohort, we're going to be meeting with human resources. I've actually got a meeting with a human resources rep actually later this week, and we're going to talk about next steps. We're going to talk about recruitment of our next cohort and seek out the opportunity to expand SELF to other staff member groups. We're going to talk about what that might look like. Recruitment will officially begin later this fall, but we are continually meeting support staff members who have children in the district who want to take part in SELF. I was actually subbing in a school last week, spoke with a person that I was subbing with. I was handing out breakfast. This was a person who happened to work in the cafeteria. She said, my son is really enjoying this high school. And I said, oh, what grade is your son in? And we had a conversation. By the end of the day, the child is part of the program. That's just kind of how it works. It's word of mouth. It's spreading out. We have another student that we connected with the student, and Ms. Helton actually sent me the information. I emailed the parent. They're now going to be part of the program. So it's going to be one of those things that's picking up steam, and it's going to be a word of mouth, and it's very much relational. And sometimes that doesn't translate over Zoom. So I want to thank the board and Dr. Little for the opportunity to help with this project. And at this time, I welcome any questions that you may have.
Do you feel like it's impacted our employment rate or reduced our turnover rate for those employee classes having this benefit for their children?
I'm not sure yet, but I think that the relationships do matter. And again, as I'm having these conversations with the parents, they really are, and family members, they're really excited that there's this extra layer of support for their students. And again, we have so many awesome supports for the kids, but this is just one extra piece that I feel like it's almost like a net of support that we can wrap around for our staff members and their families.
That is a data point that we're going to track over time.
Absolutely.
And then employee classes where we have turnover, such as bus drivers and others that may be hard to recruit, it may be to think about offering, you know, expanding essentially employee classes where we struggle to keep, so.
Absolutely.
Is there a cap?
Well, yes.
Just piggybacking off of what he said. If
Yes,
we're
well, there is not a cap at this point. I will take on as many folks as I can. And we have the capacity to continue to build the program. But I think some of those things are things we're going to work through with human resources. But Ms. Gaskins, did you have anything?
Well, I mean, I think you've just said it, Albert. So we don't want it to be like an exclusive program. We want it to be an inclusive program. So our goal is to include as many students as possible. And as we learn through this first cohort to really understand what the implications of that will be, like staffing wise, who do we need to leverage? We don't anticipate having to add any staff to support the program. But as Albert already mentioned, how do we leverage our existing staff and take advantage of programs that are already in place so that we can include as many students as possible?
So how are these students recruited?
So what we have done in the past, and again, we're revising our process. I've gone through HR and identified all of the folks who are in those 3 support staff groups, and I've sent out an email. I've also sent out paper forms in English and in Spanish and put those out to where folks can get them at the different sites. So at like the transportation office, I've gotten with the head of food services and tried to disseminate as best as I can through that. I've gotten a couple of folks who have been interested because they have heard from word of mouth that this is a program that they are interested in. In a perfect situation, what I would like to do is have a brochure that is in every new employee packet that says this is a program for students of support staff members. Haven't gotten there yet, but that's one of the goals. Absolutely.
Are grandchildren included or just children?
So again, as Ms. Gaskins said, we're trying to be inclusive, not exclusive. So that is one of those things that in a case-by-case basis, we will have those conversations. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Albert. So at this point, we're going to transition from the strategic plans. You sort of saw some of the data overview from the strategic plan. Now we're going to, then you saw the portfolio projects. And while SELF is not a portfolio project, we kind of consider it a portfolio project. Now we want to move into talking about a number of the academic supports that were created last year. And again, this goes through the summer as well. So Hillary, if you'll take it away.
Sure. So it's my pleasure to be with you tonight to share an update on our summer program. We're going to start with elementary. So for 4 weeks this summer, over 600 select rising first, second, and fourth grade students attended Summer Connections. There were 5 sites across the district, which employed over 266 certified and support staff. Classes were kept small to target student needs and personalized learning. Special education and response to intervention services, as well as services for English language learners, were provided as needed. Each day, campers engaged in academics, reading, writing, and mathematics, as well as enrichment activities. Enrichment activities included virtual visits from Riverbank Zoo, the Columbia Marionette Theater, and Charleston author Jonathan Miller. On days when there was not a special guest, campers engaged in STEM activities, PE, and art. Each day of campers were offered breakfast, lunch, and snack free of charge thanks to our partnership with food service. All campers received a math toolkit and had the opportunity to shop at a free Scholastic book fair where they chose 10+ books to add to their home library. Summer Connections staff also shopped for books to add to their classroom libraries. The overwhelming feedback from staff, students, and families was that Summer Connections was a positive experience and one that had lasting academic but also social and emotional impact, thanks to the focus on relationships. At this time, I'll share Summer Connections data for 3rd grade, which were our rising 4th graders, as it aligned with the Read to Succeed requirements. Per Act 284, Read to Succeed, districts are required to offer a summer reading camp for 3rd grade students at risk of retention. Retention is determined by SC Ready. However, students can be exempt from a retention for a variety of reasons. Of the 221 3rd grade students who flagged for retention on SC Ready, 199 met an exemption related to ESOL, IEP 504, previous retention, or performance on a district-approved alternative assessment, which automatically promoted them to the 4th grade despite their performance on SC Ready. 19 of the 3rd grade students who flagged for retention and did not meet an exemption attended Summer Connections, and at the end were assessed and earned the cut score for promotion to 4th grade. 2 of the 3rd grade students who flagged for retention and did not meet an exemption were invited to Summer Connections but did not attend, thus they were retained. One of those students left our district before the start of the school year. One of the 3rd grade students who flagged for retention on SC Ready and who did not meet an exemption attended Summer Connections, but when assessed at the end of the camp did not meet the cut score for promotion, thus the student was retained. 168 students attended camp as elective participation. These students were monitored throughout the year because of low grade level reading performance, but did not flag for retention on SC Ready. Since the students were still in need of intervention, their invitation to Summer Connections remained, and they chose to attend. A total of 188 3rd grade students attended Summer Connections. 139 students maintained or grew in their reading performance from the end of the school year to the end of Summer Connections. Only 6 students regressed, but after reviewing student attendance, missing a number of camp days may have played a part. 17 students were not tested because they did not attend the last day or the last week of camp. For rising 1st, 2nd, and 4th grade students, we gathered data in the form of text levels for English, language arts, and a rubric rating on a mathematics performance task. This data was shared with the appropriate schools for their analysis, and so they could build on student understanding at the beginning of the year. We're still in the process of compiling this data and analyzing, and I'll be able to share that data with you at a later time. We also offered a parallel camp to elementary students with an individual education plan. 75 students from across the district attended this 4-week opportunity at Pillion Elementary School. This camp employed 25 certified and support staff. The goal of the camp was to use personalized learning strategies, direct instruction, and social emotional learning to prepare students for the coming school year. The students in this camp experienced all of the same opportunities as those students in Summer Connections, which included enrichment, the Scholastic Book Fair, meals, virtual field trips, and more. Teachers and students alike had a positive and empowering and successful summer that propelled them into the beginning of the school year on a positive note. Next is our elementary summer immersion camp, which was held at Pleasant Hill Elementary for 1 week. 154 students in kindergarten through 5th grade, along with 33 middle and high school age volunteers, attended this camp. There were 10 classes and 10 teachers. Classes were offered in Chinese, French, German, and Spanish. Students especially enjoyed the multicultural assemblies that were held each day. Students showed increased use of the second language by the end of camp. Now we'll move on to our secondary programs. Middle school Summer Connections provided targeted support to students through virtual one-on-one teaching in English language arts and mathematics in an effort to sustain continuity of learning prior to the next school year. Students receive 15 live, one-on-one, 30-minute sessions with a teacher over the course of 4 weeks. A total of 288 students were served, and this camp employed 50 certified and support staff. We also offered a secondary Empower Camp to secondary students served with an individual education plan. 23 students from across the district attended this 3-week opportunity at Pleasant Hill Middle. This camp employed 6 certified and support staff. A goal of the camp was to use personalized learning strategies to build engagement and foster empowerment to energize our students for the coming school year. They opened and closed every day building a supportive community and a common language. They rooted this language with meaningful conversations that featured our district's power skills and applicable social-emotional skills. Each day included icebreakers and challenging team building and STEM activities to foster engagement. Learning was personalized by allowing students to make a lot of choices in their learning and activities. Students developed their own math goals and activities from those goals. Students explored reading like never before, examining new genres and selecting 10 books to take home for free. From day one of this camp, students were leading, caring, and serving their fellow students. It was a rewarding experience that our students and teachers will never forget. During the summer, we also offered camps for students in the arts. For 1 week in June, 159 chorus, band, and orchestra students in grades 6, 7, and 8 attended our Lexington County School District One music camps. Sites were located at Pillion and Gilbert Middle Schools, the Performing Arts Centers at Lexington High and River Bluff High, as well as the Lexington Middle School Theater. The music camps employed over 22 certified and support staff, including bus drivers and nurses. Each day of camp, students created music and planted the seeds of new friendships. This experience provided the students the opportunity to perform in large and small ensembles, perfect technique, as well as connect with performers and teachers from other schools in our district. Most importantly, these camps provided students a sense of belonging, the importance of teamwork, and the satisfaction of a job well executed. For these young musicians, they are provided the opportunity to play in an ensemble over summer break, as well as work with high school music teachers from Lexington One and other Midlands-based schools. The feedback we received not only came from the smiles, laughter, and beautiful sounds created during camp, but also the fact that our staff returns year after year, and enrollment is at or beyond capacity each time we offer camp. Our district partnered with Digital Promise and Signition, an online tutoring company, to provide 25 rising 6th grade students virtual small group tutoring sessions. These 45-minute small group sessions took place 3 times a week over the course of 6 weeks. The sessions focused on teaching mathematics with an emphasis on deep conceptual understanding and forming positive relationships with students. Lessons were designed to use open-ended mathematics tasks that promoted virtual collaboration in a virtual setting. This was a great opportunity for students to receive individualized support tailored to specific learning needs in the area of mathematics. And now our K-12 programs. Our K-12 summer programs included a Rising Stars virtual camp. This camp served 62 students in kindergarten through rising 12th grade and employed 16 teachers and staff. The staff focused on English language arts, mathematics, and art. In addition to academics, additional services that were provided included emotional and social support, distribution of school supplies and devices, home visits, phone calls, daily check-ins, referral to medical and mental health crisis intervention, food delivery, and other necessities such as clothing and school supplies. More specifically, emotional and mental health was provided 2 times a week by a certified social worker to 20 families, and families were very grateful for this help. We also offered experiences for students served in the English for Speakers of Other Languages program. For 5 weeks, 20 teachers in the ESOL Summer Connections program served 73 elementary and 22 secondary multilingual learners in a virtual setting. Students connected with their teachers via Zoom and had virtual one-on-one instruction twice each week. The virtual setting allowed for students and teachers to connect with ease and sustained our connections with our multilingual learners across the summer months. Using Title III funds to support these students, the district also supplied each child with supplies and level text for at-home use. In addition, students had the opportunity to shop at a free Scholastic book fair where they chose 10+ books to add to their home library. So I've linked the video here for you to view at a later time. I know you'll enjoy seeing the clips from all of the summer camps I just mentioned. So at this time, I'll take any questions you may have.
It's pretty impressive. Thanks to the team.
And thank you to all the teachers and staff that made this possible.
So as a board member, a rounded number of students that had summer programs and a rounded number of faculty that engaged, or ballpark?
Yeah, so approximately 1,500 students and 415 staff.
Yeah, as compared to summer prior, that's 500% more, some silly number like that?
The Summer Connections alone, we typically serve around 100 students in the Read to Succeed camp, and it was over 600 just for that one alone, so.
Please thank all those teachers.
Yeah.
And I'll just have to add, we were able to add mathematics to our Summer Connections. Previously, that had been reading and writing, and we were able to add mathematics this year as well.
We'll get ready for next summer, too.
And I will say the summer programming is another reason we're so interested in seeing those interim assessments this fall, because we hope we see the impact of these programs when we administer those assessments.
Hillary, can you walk us through the mathematical tutoring to utilize the virtual environments for that?
Yeah, so our partnership with Signition, is that what you referred to? So Signition is an online tutoring company that provides high-impact virtual tutoring. And so we've had a couple of cohorts. We had a cohort in the spring that we had rising, current fifth graders. And so they engage with a tutor 3 times a week in a 45-minute session. And these tutors are certified teachers who have approximately 15 years of experience. And they are really focused on kind of what I was referring to earlier with our shift in mathematics. You know, historically, we think mathematics being very procedural and a heavy lecture and all of this. These tutoring sessions really engage students in meaningful mathematics. They let them, again, multiple entry points, finding success, identifying their strengths, working from their strengths and moving them forward. So this gave us just another layer to be able to support these students in a very focused support system.
Thank you. So you can certainly tell our summertime this year was very different than in years past, and we've intensified that. And Ms. Gaskins, I believe that's also part of next summer as well?
The ESSER 3 budget included summer programming for the next 2 summers.
Okay. And I'm thankful for Mr. Bissell for being here tonight, and as he's going to walk us through what really was maybe one of our landmark achievements last year in Lula.
Thank you, Dr. Little. Madam Chair, members of the board, I appreciate the opportunity to provide a summary of our Lula program this evening. We'll start from the beginning. In July of 2020, our senior leadership team determined that it was necessary for our district to offer a 100% online learning model to our parents and students for the 2021 school year in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And at this time, when that decision was made, Lexington One Online Learning Academy offered supplemental online courses primarily to high school students, with a few middle school students completing advanced math coursework. And so up to that point each year, Lula provided around 20 total course offerings to about 30 students a year who required flexible options for earning high school credits. By the end of that month, Lula had approximately 7,300 students in grades kindergarten through 12 enrolled in the program. And so obviously Lula would need to be redesigned and built from the ground up in approximately a month to provide students and families with the online option by the end of August. So that spurred an intense collaborative effort among central services divisions and 31 schools. We launched that effort to create the version of Lula that we're familiar with now. As we got deeper into the details of that planning, we realized that we would need to build 3 distinct programs within Lula. So we'll talk a little bit about elementary program. We required a staff of 112 general ed teachers with each of our 17 elementary schools staffing a full kindergarten through 5th grade team of online teachers, in some cases multiple teachers at each grade level to account for the student demand. Each school identified an assistant principal to serve as the Lula administrator and point of contact for students and parents and teachers. Human resources and school administration work together to reallocate the FTE based on the number of students in the online model at each school. Students coming into the online model meant less students in the face-to-face model, which means that teachers had to come out to teach the online model and then balance everything out inside of the school. So scheduling students into the Lula program was half the work. Rescheduling the school's face-to-face students and teachers was the other half. And so when Lula scheduling was complete for the fall, there were 3,060 elementary students learning in our online academy with the grade level breakdown shown on this slide. So the natural structure of elementary schools and the high enrollment numbers at each school allowed us to set the program up inside of each school, with the grade level teams being there serving primarily students from their school with teachers from their school. We were not able to do that in the same way with our middle school program. So our middle school student enrollment in the fall was around 1,900 students, 1,932. That required 81 teachers to cover the over 584 course sections to fulfill the student demand for middle school Lula. Students registered for their core courses, but also a variety of exploratories like STEM and computer science, performing and visual arts, phys ed, and world languages. So the middle school schedule didn't allow for a single middle school to address all the required courses for just their students. So our middle school model employed a pod structure where teachers from two separate middle schools kind of came together and created a grade level middle school team so that they could collectively serve the students from their two middle schools as they came together there. So that's kind of what that looked like and how the pods were divided out. Our 8 middle schools formed 4 pods with teachers serving students from their pod and then related arts teachers serving students across all pods. And so an administrator was identified from each pod to form a team of 4 middle school Lula administrators, and they would then serve as the point of contact for teachers, students, and parents. Our high school Lula program, again, had to take on a completely different structure, right? So as if it were not as complex a puzzle enough at that point, the demand for different courses at the high school is pretty high, and it starts to get pretty complicated when you start to look at what that scheduling matrix has to be. So high school Lula students required a wide range of course offerings, not just to stay on track for graduation, but to also engage in the learning pathways that they had already chosen for their high school career coming into the 2021 school year. In high school, we had 100 teachers allocated to cover the course demand for 2,240 students. And in most cases, those teachers leveraged online curriculum through a partnership with Virtual SC and an asynchronous instructional environment. I'll talk a little more about that in a minute. I guess the thing to consider there is that schedule didn't look like the elementary and middle schedule. It was much more a self-directed model for our high school students where they had opportunity to work through coursework, but teachers did schedule regular synchronous interaction and peer collaborative opportunities to support their students throughout that process. So our high school students earned required credits towards graduation, as well as a variety of advanced placement credits. And dual enrollment students were able to participate in the Lula program while supplementing their course load with Lula courses as well. Again, administrator identified within each high school to serve as a point of contact for the teachers and the students and the parents from their school. So scheduling and staffing, as well as technology access, some of the key pieces there, and those were all addressed simultaneously from July through the start of that school year, last school year. But we also had to create program consistencies and student guidelines for each grade band to address each of those different models. Our middle and high school programs in particular required a huge effort to create consistency among all of the schools in that grade band. We had teachers from different schools teaching different students. It was not really possible to just roll with the consistencies that have been established inside of a particular building. There's a lot of cross-district work that needed to be done there. Processes created for consistent grading practices, attendance procedures, and communication with parents, homeschool administrators, and counselors all involved. We coordinated support services for special ed, 504, ESOL, and intervention between school-based providers and the Lula teachers and students remotely. And we work with administrators and teachers all year on improving and enhancing all of those processes. Curriculum planning and instructional coaching was critical at all grade levels as you're transitioning to a new instructional environment. Not only did we need to develop curriculum and materials that were functional for the online classroom, but we also needed to prop up approximately 300 teachers total who are transitioning to a brand new way of teaching and providing learning experiences for students in a very short period of time. We launched a weekly professional learning series that brought teachers together to learn and collaborate across our district virtually. Our instructional coordinators held weekly office hours for curriculum support. A teacher hub of digital resources was created and updated to meet the ongoing needs of teachers throughout the year. And perhaps most importantly, we visited teachers and we brought them Lula swag, and we met with them online to talk through their challenges and highlight their successes. And we focused on building a true Lula community across our district for those teachers to feel a part of. This is a snapshot of some of those structures that were put in place, some professional learning, highlighting virtual student work, counseling services, on-site book and material pickups. And that's just a snapshot of what it might look like from a student perspective, maybe learning math or engaging in an ELA group discussion. So many students found a great fit in the online classroom for them, and others struggled, honestly, to make the transition to such a self-directed environment. Our teachers, they're vigilant in reaching out and contacting students and trying to engage them and reaching out to families to engage them. We realized soon that we were gonna need to come up with a way to track those students who were what we called, periodically disengaged. They were kind of in and out. And so we built and coded a spreadsheet so that we could try to keep track of those students across all of the schools in a particular grade band. And while schools worked as hard as they possibly could to try to keep that updated, it was a little cumbersome. In some cases, it was successful in reaching those students, but we realized that there were some students that really needed the face-to-face environment to be successful. And so we realized that homegrown solution wasn't the best solution for us, so we researched an alternative solution and partnered with IntelliSpark. And IntelliSpark's a comprehensive student tracking system and SEL monitoring system that allows data points to be shared on students across schools internally, data points to show what teachers are saying about those students and where they might be able to get some support or need some support from their counseling and school-based mental wellness teams. We built capacity for managing that system and then plan to launch that in semester 2. And we did, and we'll continue on with that system this year in our Lula programs and in some of our high schools as well. That was semester 1. Semester 2 brought on some new challenges, a whole brand new set of challenges as students would begin switching instructional models at that point. Some students were coming into Lula, a significant number of students were returning to face-to-face at that point, setting off a significant domino effect within the program, but across all schools as that enrollment was changing. And maybe for the first time ever, our entire district went through the complete master scheduling and staffing process for a second time in the same school year. Ms. Price is still having some flashbacks about that. So here you can see the adjustments in teachers and enrollment represented in these numbers. So you can kind of see the impact that would have on a school as that many students are coming back and you have to kind of balance course loads and make all the HR stuff happen. So we hit the reset button again, district-wide. We took a monumental collaborative effort among central services divisions and schools to get all the right pieces in place. Our Lula team began the onboarding process with new teachers, drew upon our experiences from the first semester, revisited our operational structures and program consistencies. All of our Lula admins, our digital learning coaches in our schools, they were onboarding students that were in the face-to-face environment coming into Lula for the second semester. And we partnered with the Graduation Alliance, I think for the first time, to provide dedicated learning coaches for students who were consistently disengaged during the first semester, but needed to remain in that online learning model. So we shared exemplary online teaching strategies by highlighting teachers and really lifting up all of the good that we saw develop out of the first semester.
I do
So-
want to say, just very quickly, you're not exaggerating when you use the term monumental, and you're not exaggerating when you're saying a school within a school. It's essentially, they put 2 years' worth of work in 4 months, which is pretty remarkable. So I just want to, I don't want to, we're doing a lot of information tonight, but that in particular, I think is worthy to highlight. Just that is a tremendous lift of organization to try and make that happen.
And what I would add is I understand the reason we gave the flexibility to families to come in and out, but we may want to consider, just from the stability of the instruction model as well as the employees, you either doing Lula for the year or you're not. And so, but again, y'all decide that and give us feedback on that. But I just think the transition in and out of those worlds is not an easy transition, but I may be wrong. So.
No, I think that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, monumental for sure, and I feel like a testament to the strength we have across the system to pull together in each one of our schools to pull that off. So, as we made some adjustments to launch the second semester, we simultaneously began planning for the 21-22 school year, which we're in right now. And Lula, along with alternative educational services, became a new district program. Lexington One Personalized Learning Pathways, and would fall under a single administrative team led by Chris Rabin. And at that time, Mr. Rabin and his team joined the planning meetings and helped to shape the vision for Lula moving forward. During the spring semester, we launched an enrollment campaign through each middle and high school, and in January, February-ish, around 2021, surveys went out to families to gauge interest in returning to Lula for the 21-22 school year. So administrators and counselors contacted each student who expressed an interest in returning to the virtual learning environment, had conversations with them. We want to make sure that that was the best placement for them. And then in April, registration began. And while we expected around 700 total students in grades 6 through 12, registration closed in mid-May with approximately 300 students committed to Lula for the 21-22 school year. And so that lower enrollment could be attributed to a number of factors. Mitigation strategies for COVID-19 were proving effective. A vaccine was available for our older students. Many were hopeful things were going to get back to normal. And so at that point, due to the lower student enrollment numbers, we'd have to go back and get creative again with our approach to staffing and making it happen for the 21-22 school year. So at middle school, the Lula team worked with Human Resources Office to respond to the new staffing demands and collaborate with schools as well. And based on the number of middle school students that we had registered for Lula, we were able to hire 10 full-time teachers to provide a standalone instructional staff for the middle school program. No pods, no spreading it across schools. We had 10 instructional staff dedicated to that program. So we could do 2 grade 6 teachers with dual certification so that they could teach math and ELA, 4 teachers to share grades 7 and 8, exploratory teachers for music appreciation, phys ed, and Spanish, and then a resource teacher dedicated to serve Lula students in grades 6 through 8 receiving those services. And so then as far as counseling goes, the AES school counselor would take on the task of providing counseling services for those middle school students. Staff in high school, again, provided a different challenge. We wanted to offer as many different high school courses as possible, but course offerings are dependent on both the student demand for that course and our ability to staff certified teachers to actually teach it. So we had to look at some different options there as well. To accommodate all of the student course requests against the staff that we had available to teach it, we took an alternative approach to staffing by using what we would call an adjunct approach, or an adjunct method, or model rather. So this gave 18 teachers across 5 different high schools the opportunity to teach some online sections and teach some face-to-face sections as well. Again, the counselor at AES would provide counseling services to those students. And then we contracted with Virtual South Carolina to purchase some virtual learning labs, which allow us to leverage the Virtual SC course curriculum, but a Virtual SC teacher as well to plug some of those gaps where students needed these courses to stay on track for graduation, but we didn't have the teachers to service them at that point because we're trying to balance the face-to-face and online demand. And then, of course, we'll continue to work with Virtual SC for content creation and their course platform. to give the teachers a little bit of help in creating that, those learning materials for students. I'm almost there, I promise. So as of the beginning of June 2021, not too long ago, we anticipated a Lula enrollment of 314 students. The breakdown is 139 middle school and 175 high school. And so we moved forward with the idea, and Mr. Raven and his team did a tremendous amount of work to get that program propped up around those numbers. It would be a program of choice for students who are most comfortable with the online learning model or could benefit from a flexible daily schedule. But of course, what was happening is COVID-19 cases were steadily increasing, and so then did the number of families requesting virtual learning options for their children. And so to accommodate these requests, Mr. Raven and his team opened registration, and Lula quickly reached capacity. They opened it back up and they topped out. And so we currently have an enrollment in grades 6 through 12 of 501 students. That's 197 at the middle school and 304 at the high school. And additionally, as I shared in an update last month, we launched an elementary Lula program to meet the needs of approximately 500 students in grades kindergarten through 5 due to increased demand. Our registration launched on August 2nd, and once we identified that there was a significant demand by August 6th, we moved forward to coordinate that staffing. And so enrollment, logistics, communication, all set up to go live on the first day of school. We had 18 teachers and around 511 students. And that brings us to today. And so currently we have a full K-12 program in place for the 21-22 school year. And our experiences from last year are clearly paying dividends. I'll close here with a quote from one of our middle school Lula teachers. I won't read it out loud because I hate when that happens. But I think this represents the energy and excitement that's radiating from that middle school team this year, and the impact that that virtual model is having on some of our students and families after a year of growth and reflection and adjustment. And so at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Bissell, does IntelliSpark offer any type of rubric or assessment for your compatibility with a Lula program? So if I'm a kid who's interested in the Lula program, is there some type of tool that me and my family can use to assess would I be successful in a Lula program? And if not, I mean, it's still a conscious decision for that family, but these are the interventions that you as a student learner are going to need to engage to be successful in Lula.
Yeah, we actually provide that up front and an initial conversation that schools have with students, but also at the point of registration where we provide a list of successful characteristics for successful online learners for parents and students to consider. We even have a tool that runs an algorithm behind it, kind of gives you a finite number of where you land on a scale and being prepared to be successful online. I do believe there are some surveys in IntelliSpark that assess your power skills and social emotional intelligence period, and that all can play into assessing readiness. I don't think there's one specifically for online readiness in that platform, though.
And it'd be interesting to see if that correlates with what we see. Again, we're still young and immature with this, but I love where this is going, and just trying to get ready for year 3, 5, 7. You know, it's going to be a good legacy for this district.
The growth that we've seen from year 1 even to year 2 right now, just having that to build off of has been really impressive to see.
I have to say, the last 15 months and the Lula story, to me, is just it's an incredible story of responsiveness and flexibility and pivoting. I mean, it's happened over and over and over again through the Lula growth and development. But the fact that you, on August 2nd, when you got up that morning, didn't know if you were going to have an elementary Lula program, and on August 17th, you opened with 511 elementary students. I mean, that's just incredible. And it's a tribute to the whole team that you recognized that there was going to be demand in the community, and you made it happen. And those students didn't skip a beat. They started at school on the same day that the face-to-face students did. So well done.
Thank you. A lot of coffee that morning for everyone across the district. And again, none of that is at all possible without the amazing people we have working inside of our schools to pivot on a dime. It's really impressive.
When you said earlier the cap that exists, can you give a little clarity on how we arrived at the cap number?
Yeah, I think just through experience and knowing last year for our online courses, particularly in our high school, 35 is kind of that ceiling where you start to diminish, your effectiveness as a teacher, and having a full load of 35. So we kind of use that as a number we like to try to stick around, particularly in the upper grades. Obviously, as you work with younger children, they require more attention, and so you want to try to keep those lower. I think we were doing the best that we could on short notice to accommodate the sudden influx of additional requests, knowing that there was not going to be any additional staffing allocated to provide any, relief of those sections that we had scheduled already. So that's where we had to kind of cut it off.
Sure.
We know we had a.
And correct me if I'm wrong, there's also legislation that exists that once we get above 5%, then we lose 50%, or we, whatever number above that, we're going to begin to lose cost per pupil, reimbursement per pupil. Is that correct?
That's correct. I think it might be 41%. Mr.
Like,
Salters.
we can have, I think, 1,317 students, and we have 1,012 right now. So we can't get to that number unless we add staff.
Right.
Because we're completely maxed out
Right.
at this point.
So, at least my understanding of this is that at least was a fairly arbitrary number. The thought being that it should cost less to educate a child virtually than in a brick and mortar school. In your experience, how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, clearly you don't have as many, your facilities aren't used in the same way. And so I'm sure somebody could place a number on that. I think what it comes down to is the high quality instruction. And so our most valuable assets are teachers, and you can't skimp on teachers if you go online. So I would say that I guess theory is flawed in that sense.
And obviously less is more. I mean, the more dedicated, if we could get that number down from 35 to 25 to 20, obviously the educational product is going to be better. I say all that, and obviously they also, all of these students have access to athletics, band, any other services offered by the school district. Is that correct?
Athletics, yes. The fine and performing arts this year was not something we were able to offer.
Right, okay, you're right.
Potentially at some point, but yeah, they do still have that connection back to the school, and athletics are wide open.
Sure. So all that to say, I hope that as we look at this moving forward, that they take that in consideration with the legislation to say, okay, we had to start somewhere, and 5% is where they started. But obviously to do it and to do it well, maybe that 5% is fairly arbitrary, and maybe that number should, because again, if we're going to mold an educational product around each individual child, well, each individual child is going to have different needs, and some are going to be served in Lula, and some are going to be served face-to-face. And so I just have concerns that we just pick an arbitrary, and not us, but as a state, that we have picked an arbitrary number that maybe doesn't carry a whole lot of weight, or at least it should be examined regularly.
Yeah, the original arbitrary number that they chose was anybody. So if one student, that they started that way. And what we really argued for them last spring, and again, I think sometimes when you look at things that were done last spring in the context of declining pandemic stress, and then you see in the fall, and now we're increasing again in short terms of impact. But it started out with this idea that any student would be counted in that way. We argued that our online virtual programs were actually innovation incubators, and that we did not want them to discourage us from utilizing that. I think what they were really looking at was really a different thing about staying virtual as a district, as opposed to offering these types of programs. So we really were arguing that the Online Learning Academy was this innovation incubator for districts, and that as we talked about moving back, I think you talked about being better than normal, that this was really that fertile ground for that. That was important to utilize the lessons that we learned last year and apply them this year. I think you can really already see that in terms of how we are supporting students who are quarantined or sick at home or whatever it may be. We're already improving that process, where you see schools that we're temporarily switching to a virtual model. Their experiences are much different, say, than they were 18 months ago, without a doubt. I mean, really leaps and bounds. But so on the one hand, we kind of wish they would get rid of the cap, but on the other hand, we're thankful for that the cap's not, 100% or 0 or whatever it is, because that was, or one, I guess, one kid, because that was going to be more difficult for us. But again, I think you'll see the growth that we're making there has truly served as that innovation to really push innovation in the school district and about how we learn and think about students, even in something, and I don't know if I think Albert's gone, but even something as simple as self, which we were really time and space bound when we started talking about self, and it was, how are we going to get tutors to Pillion or to Gilbert from other places, not tutors, academic coaches, sorry. How do we get academic coaches to those areas? And likewise, how do we get those students, whether to maybe USC or to, wherever it may be? How do we bridge that gap for students? And then, of course, how we do that virtually totally revamp that entire experience as well. So there are areas where we prefer, obviously we prefer face-to-face as a number one delivery model. But I think what we're doing is we're maximizing the virtual learning experience and that learning environment, and that helps out a lot.
Yeah, and we see the same thing play out in medicine right now in terms of telehealth. Telehealth is a perfect example. And so telehealth, unfortunately was being used as a broad sword, but, nothing can replace actually physically, listening to a patient, putting your hands on a patient in a very, doctor, patient, I have to be careful how I say that. But you just can't really replace that in a telehealth model. There's not a good substitute for it, but it works great as a scalpel. It should not be used as a broadsword, but should be used as a scalpel. And when it's used, and it's very effective, it's a great tool, just like Lula. Lula is when used appropriately. And again, like you're talking about, it's not the grade A number one primary delivery model that we want to go to, but at certain times during a student's student life cycle, it can be a very effective tool to be used.
And I want to just add one other thing to that, Dr. Guyton. We believe, especially for our high school students, that our partners in higher education are not going to do less online learning in the future. They have found that to be a model that they utilize. Even pre-pandemic, lots of schools were doing significant online learning experiences across this state. I'm talking Clemson and University of South Carolina, among others. So online learning for our high school students, I believe we're morally compelled to continue that process so that they are prepared for those online learning environments when they get to college so that they can be very successful. So when you think about Lula in the future, to use your scalpel metaphor, Lula in the future might be, and we just use Tiny Child as an example. Naomi may say, I want to do 3 face-to-face classes and 1 Lula class, or 2 Lula classes, and I want to get ahead. Or I want to do 1 or 3 Lula classes, and then I want to go to LTC for cosmetology or my CNA or a machining class or those kinds of things. So we really look at it as it will be the ultimate personalization tool as it continues to evolve and move forward, because it's going to be more flexible. So it's not just about you're in Lula or you're in face-to-face, but you're really in this approach, especially juniors and seniors who have greater flexibility. And I think we're really compelled to do that as a instructional model so that they can be more successful in college, or even, it's not even just college. It's if you go get a certification exam, if you go do, whatever it may be, a Michelin or wherever else, those things are transitioning to online learning experiences as well. So they need to be prepared for those things.
Well, and Dr. Will, I would like to add, so my daughter, sorry, too close. My daughter is a sophomore at USC, and so last year, her freshman year, most of her classes were online. They did some face-to-face, and she was very excited that all of her classes were going to be back face-to-face this fall. And she's an English major, and so 3 of her 4 classes are in the humanities building. And she got an email last week that the HVAC system in the humanities building is broken, and the building will be closed for the next 6 weeks. And so all of those classes are online now. And so even the university is using that as a way to manage unexpected difficulties that they're facing. And so she's back online 75% of the time. But I think that's a good, I think we're going to see more and more uses of this virtual option that we're all very accustomed to now. So.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that about the future of Lula, because I think right now we have people in 2 different camps. We have the people who are choosing Lula because they think that's what's safest for their families, and then we have people who are choosing Lula because they're saying, hey, I think I learn better this way. And so you mentioned that the Lula students have access to athletics, but not the arts, and so I was just going to encourage us to provide in the future that equal opportunity to all those LTC classes and stuff. And so that's really good. On that last slide, you had part of your quote. It said, we are also building connections with the entire family. Do we have any kind of like parent-student agreement that our Lula students have to sign that might say, hey, if you're not meeting certain expectations, we're gonna move you back to face-to-face?
We have that.
Awesome.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Have we had to do much of that?
No, not at this point. Again, last year was a learning experience for a lot of folks, and on our side, a learning experience for us to figure out how we could provide better services. And I think on the parents and students side, a learning experience for them to figure out which models they're going to be the most successful in. And so I feel like this round, we were very forthright in what our laying out what our expectations would be based on what we know is true about successful online learning, and we'll continue to monitor that.
And last question, has it been challenging for the district to keep up with requirements for accessibility for our online learning? I know that's a big thing, like federally, that's required.
Yeah, we're very fortunate to have access to great technology in the hands of our students, and fortunately, these days, a lot of accessibility tools are included in the devices that we put in students' hands. And so for a lot of those particular accommodations that students receive or require, we're able to support teachers and families with utilizing those built-in accessibility tools on the devices. And then we're able to leverage different types of tools to just stack on to those the basic hardware and software that we provide students to meet whatever their needs are.
And have our teachers had any kind of training? I mean, I know it gets even as detailed as fonts and colors that are appropriate to use.
Yeah.
Have they had training and stuff on that?
A lot of the software that we use it's high quality software and meets all of those standard requirements across the board. We do provide a good bit of training and support on how to leverage accessibility tools on the devices as well. And so even things like our learning management systems take into consideration some of those different accessibility guidelines that are in place and build those into their platform so that when they're designing, those things are already there.
Kathy, you bring up an interesting point about the relationships, parental relationships, and from that quote. In that same vein, and I'm sure right now you're getting a ton of feedback from parents and such regarding just the Lula platform and those kind of things. But historically we've utilized school improvement councils as such to be that avenue for that sort of feedback. Moving forward, is there been discussion about a plan regarding a if you will, a school improvement council for Lula.
Yeah, I think as much input and feedback we can get from our stakeholders, the better off we are and helping to meet their needs. I would have to follow back up with Mr. Raven on any particular plans that he has in place for middle and high school this year. I know in talking to some of our middle school teachers, they're very involved with some community partners and have formed some really solid relationships with their parents already this year. They had an open house. I think they ran over the course of 1 or 2 nights, a couple of different sessions, and the turnout was absolutely amazing. And that went a long way to opening up that dialogue and establishing a line of communication for parents to reach out and just have a conversation about what's happening so we can make improvements on the fly.
So can you tell us where the teachers are housed for middle and high school?
Sure. The middle school teachers are housed in Lexington Middle School. I believe it's that 600 wing on the right side of the school there if you're looking at it from the street, if I'm not mistaken. That's the numbers on the hall. The high school teachers are spread out across our district in our high schools. And so we have maybe 4 teachers from White Knoll High School that are teaching Lula sections as well as face-to-face sections, not at the same time, but their schedule is such so that they may have a Lula section in the morning, and in the afternoon they have 2 face-to-face sections, so they're still based at their home schools.
Okay. And is any training offered to parents of elementary age students?
So we put together materials to provide for them, just for the teacher to reach out when they do their welcome call, virtual open house, whatever it is they have in place. I'll be honest with you, this year with the quick turnaround, that may not have happened on the first day, but they are working through those parent conversations, and we have those resources available. We fine-tuned them not just over the past couple of years with Lula, but we've had to do that with our one-to-one implementation for years now, and so we've continuously made adjustments to those so that they're more family-friendly.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. Mr. Baskett's going to come back to the microphone and give us a little about dual enrollment.
All right, thank you for that introduction again, reintroduction, I should say. And so before I move on, I want to point out as a former English teacher that this slide is foreshadowing for what's to come with our partnerships with Midlands Tech. So this student seems to be an elementary age student. And so one thing we're going to be working on with Midlands Tech, and it's in progress now, is a K to career focus. And so I want to point that out as a former English teacher, but we'll talk about it a little bit more. So dual enrollment in Lexington School District One is a part of our System Commitment One. And we're working on preparing those students to advance on time, prepared to graduate and ready to enter college. And so as you look at the first part, higher education partners, we have Piedmont Technical College, which they focus more on the agricultural classes at Pillion High School. Then you have Midlands Technical College, who serves every school except for Pillion right now, but we're going to be working on that in the spring. And then USC Sumter, they offer courses for all of our high schools. And one thing I didn't mention about Midlands Tech is they also, it's good to follow Howard, is because with Lula, students who need those online courses, Midlands Tech provides some of those course offerings that we need to kind of fill schedules. And so with Midlands Technical College, you have something that is, they differentiate between their classes being online and virtual. So sometimes you might think those are synonymous or the same, and for them it's not. So online is asynchronous option where it is more of you still have deadlines and self-paced options that self-paced, but there's still deadlines, and there's not a particular time they meet. Whereas virtual is a synchronous option where it does meet at a particular day and time. And so we do have students in both of those types of courses across all of our high schools except for Pillion High School. And so I wanted to point out with our partners, as I just mentioned about Midlands Tech and Lexington One, the partnership, in our preliminary conversation and those that are to follow, we're working on how to not just focus on dual enrollment in the high school sense, but also thinking about how do we get students access to higher education opportunities and career opportunities as early as elementary school. And so that as they're progressing through elementary school and middle school and high school and learning more about their interests, we can pair them with those particular career programs and pathways to learn more about them, which means they're going to be more informed about their decisions when they decide to leave us. So pointing back to Commitment 1, that's also focusing on industry with certification. So if they're getting certified in industry or they're deciding I want to pursue higher education and continue my educational career. Improvement of student access. So we've done a lot of work in the last year to make the application process much simpler. We do believe that's been a barrier in the past for students where sometimes if something is too challenging on the front end, you may say, you know what, I knew I couldn't do this college thing. I'm just not even gonna try. And so we've shifted some of the paper applications to online formats, and there's still the paper application if you need it, but we reduced some of those steps that students had to complete to get into the classes. And so that's why you might see that our numbers increased from last year around 600 students to about 700 students as of today, about 703, I just looked, just to make sure. Another thing that we've done is we tried to increase opportunity knowledge with the schools. So how do we communicate to our students who's eligible for dual enrollment classes? One thing I like to point out with Midlands Technical College is they use multiple measures to identify students or to qualify them for dual enrollment courses. So you can qualify with the 3.0 GPA, you can qualify with your standardized test scores through pre-ACT, PSAT, which are both taken in 10th grade. PSAT can also be taken in the junior year. And then also your SAT and your ACT. And then the third thing, if you can't qualify based on the 3.0 GPA or the standardized test scores, you can take the AccuPlacer placement test, which is administered by College Board. So there are many options to allow you to qualify for dual enrollment.
I'm going to jump in on this because I think there's a moment that seems like it makes perfect sense. But that didn't happen overnight either.
Right.
Right? So we've come a long way when it comes to that. Midlands Tech was a very difficult partnership to come to those terms with, and we're very grateful that they've done that because we really see that, or I really see that as a game changer for our district. But it's taken the better part of 4.5 years to get to that moment, and for me, personally, this was a huge moment when Midlands Tech came to the table with multiple measures. Because up to this point, it was incredibly difficult for any student to take any dual enrollment at Midlands Tech. And that's why USC Sumter was our primary model holder. Now that Midlands Tech is involved, we've opened up the array of coursework and courses and opportunities and perhaps even professors and those kinds of things, whereas before that was not really possible for us. So now we have USC Sumter and Midlands Tech working hand in hand. And so when we talk about 700 students, remember, I think just a few years ago, this was down to like at 100 students. Now it's at 700, where we see we're going to continue to move that on. 700 is not the top. We really, as Michael Jordan once said, the ceiling is the roof. We have a lot of growth left, we believe, in the dual enrollment program.
Sure, and as you even mentioned with the online options and some of the board members mentioned, we have students at every high school taking at least one online dual enrollment course. That includes Pillion High School, who USC Sumter does not offer as many online courses, but they do offer a speech class that's online, and we have at least one student who's taken that course, who's a Lula student, but is able to take that course through USC Sumter. And then, like I said, every other high school, including, I think I looked, and we had about 13 Lula students who are taking courses through Midlands Technical College right now, either the online course or the virtual course. And we even have some students who are taking courses on the Midlands Tech campus right now. There's one student who's a Lexington High School student. She is taking courses at the Beltline campus. And then we have one student at River Bluff High School who is taking courses at the airport campus. So we're steadily growing in that area with Midlands Tech, and it's really moved very quickly within the last year. Towards the end of the first semester last year to where we are right now, we've made a lot of progress. With the program growth and sustainability, Dr. Little's mentioned that, and I also mentioned that a little bit earlier, where much before I started in this position, and I look back at some numbers, I believe that dual enrollments really kind of took off in 2013-14 school year, which started around 50 students. You look at about 7 to 8 years later, and we're at 700, and that's going to continue to grow. as more families learn more and more about what we offer. We tried to make information more accessible, and we have done that. And I get calls and emails from families, if not every day, every other day, asking questions about what can I do for my child now? What can I do for my child in the spring? And they're really looking for advisement. And so I'm working very closely with the high schools, Lexington Technology Center, and then also Lula, to provide as much information as we can for students, and then making sure that students that it's a simple process to get registered and to apply, and then also to register for those dual enrollment courses. But I want to talk about, when I talk about growth and sustainability, financial assistance or the whole finance system when it comes to dual enrollment courses and how much they cost, right? And so right now, our students, if they're taking at least 2 courses, so about 6 credit hours, those courses are completely free to them based on state funding. So with Midlands Tech, that's SC WINS funding, and then with USC Sumter, that is the LTAP funding, or Lottery Tuition Assistance Program. And so it removes barriers. It breaks down those barriers for students. Something we still have an opportunity to look more closely at and to examine is the cost of textbooks. That has been a concern that I've gotten questions about in recent weeks. So that's something that we can look forward to talk about later on, is what we can do to assist families with textbooks as those enrollment numbers grow. And the challenge in that is that with academic freedom, textbooks can change from semester to semester, and including with instructors. Some of our high schools do have what's called affiliate instructors, which means they're teachers who work for our district, but they've been approved by the college or university to teach the course. And then we also have adjunct instructors who work specifically for the college and university, and they come into our schools. So we have both of those going on right now. But as far as potential savings for students who've taken dual enrollment courses, in the last year, it's about $2.7 million in tuition savings. That's a lot of money saved for families, but it also is a lot of experience that students can gain to prepare themselves for that transition from secondary education to post-secondary education. And so in speaking of that transition, that's what we're doing here. So as Dr. Little mentioned earlier, some board members mentioned earlier, with instructional models shifting across the country and higher education and students having to learn how to be engaged and learning how to navigate an online course, our students are practicing that right now as sophomores, as juniors and seniors. And looking at the specific numbers we have right now, another part of my job is I oversee the College Center at Gilbert High School, which is an early college high school program. What that means is that with our partnership at Midlands Technical College, our students in the College Center have an opportunity to earn their associate's degree in high school at no cost. Right now, we have 38 sophomores, and of the 39 sophomores taking college classes in our district, 38 are College Center students. 1 student is a River Bluff High School student. And so that's a way to improve student access, to remove those barriers. But we're also preparing more students at an earlier age, those first-generation college students, those from lower income backgrounds, like I was as a student. And we're giving them access early, but also not just access, we're giving them support. And we use AVID in the College Center, which stands for Advancement via Individual Determination. And it is the College and Career Readiness Framework. And so we're doing lots of things across our district and working with many partners and many teams at each of our schools to make sure we have an experience that our students will thrive in, and that they know that I can always get support from my high school and from my district, from my counselors, my administrators, from myself. And I'm just privileged, and I get the opportunity to do this job every day. And it's something that I am very excited about, that I love to do. It's nothing greater than having a conversation with a parent, and they're just so appreciative and so grateful that the district has committed this position to create this position that I'm in and have been in for the past year and a half to support their families' pursuits of higher education. And at this time, I'll take any questions.
With 4 of our high schools having essentially a block scheduling model, and 1 of our high schools having the mod scheduling, are you seeing less of those students being able to take dual enrollment classes since their day-to-day schedule is so different?
No, it hasn't been too much of a barrier. What we found is that the one high school that is not on traditional block schedule, they've been able to, they understand their schedule, so they've been able to use blocks of time to plug in for students in the first semester to take those 2 courses, at minimum 2 courses. And then in the spring, they kind of have, once again, blocks of time. And with asynchronous courses, those online courses, they kind of fit into whatever the students' paths are, so they can still take those courses. So it actually hasn't been a barrier at all.
Earlier you said that Midlands Technical College wasn't partnering with Pillion. Why is that?
It's not that they're not partnering with Pillion. There wasn't enough interest in the courses that are offered through Midlands Tech. And so the students they didn't put in course requests for Midlands Technical College courses. And so the students that we do have enrolled for dual enrollment at Pillion, they're all through USC Sumter. So that's something that we know that's an area that we can expand in and make sure we find the courses that the students are interested in there and find ways to get them access to those courses.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Just quickly, because you know this is one of my favorite topics. Talk about how we're going to expand. You talked about the K through career. Talk about like mathematics and science and some of those things that we did not have with USC Sumter that we're planning on Midlands Tech. Just give us 60 seconds or 120 seconds.
Sure, thank you for reminding me of that. I'm looking at the actual courses that are being taken right now throughout the fall, and we do have some students in the probability and statistics. We have students in calculus. I have students in college algebra. We have students in some engineering courses. And so as students are learning more about the courses that are available to them, and we talk about some STEM pathways and some mathematic pathways, we do have some students who are advanced in high school. And so they've kind of exhausted the list of high school math courses that they can take. So they're looking for, they don't want to stop math, they want to continue their development of math. And so now that they understand that they can have access to these courses, they understand more about it. So when we talk about the IGP process, the individual graduation plan process at high schools, students and families are now being made aware that, hey, your math, you can go ahead and get a head start and go ahead and take these courses now so that as you transfer, and we're doing the research too and looking at the admissions process and how do these courses transfer across the state, and also how do these courses transfer outside of the state. So that's a common question that we get. And so we do have resources that we share with families that say, hey, you can do this. And then so we want to look at those final math courses, that fourth level math. There are many opportunities at each of our high schools to say, hey, we know you have X amount of students who can take this course. Let's go ahead and get this section or multiple sections prepared and built into your master schedule. So then either you have an affiliate instructor at your school who can teach it, or we get an adjunct instructor who can come out and teach that course. But that's another area where we know our numbers can grow and we can provide the supports for students who are going to be taking more those higher level math courses.
Yeah, those fourth level math courses, really, with our new partnership, we're going to start moving out of and I think of fourth level non-math major courses. So again, that's personal for me because I had one that lived in my house. And for her to have been able to take college algebra in high school would have been a huge advantage. Instead of right now, her freshman year, we're sweating every day when she goes in to take college algebra. And we're just like, please, Lord, let her pass this class and be successful in it. That's the idea is that could now become a high school course. And you're taking that course in the supportive environment of a Gilbert High School where you know everybody, or in Lexington High School where people are really looking after you, and you're not thrust into a college environment, because those are the classes, and we're also working with Midlands Tech to identify those stumbling block courses. Where are the courses that people get caught up? Is it first semester English? Is it that college algebra? And then we can identify some of those things and offer those things in college and in high school so they become as well. But that's when the math thing, where Midlands Tech opens up for us, especially in science and mathematics, that we just have never had access before. And it begins to change how we can view these third and fourth level classes. Why do chemistry, we could offer chemistry. We can offer some of these other areas, especially for students who that's not going to be their major. They're not going to do those things, or they only need us. Like if they're a nursing student, just for example, I'll use that randomly. If she's not going to need 3 levels of chemistry to graduate college. It's those kinds of things. So we can now be a little more creative in what we offer.
Sure, and as we add, as we send our projections to Midlands Technical College, they've been very great at working with us to say, hey, whatever you're projecting, if you get it to us as early as possible with those course requests, we have the instructors we can dedicate specifically for Lexington District One cohorts, or we'll find the instructor. So that's been a great thing too. And Dr. Little just mentioned like an English 101 course. As of right now, we have 408 students taking an English 101 course across our district. And for the numbers based on grade level, just overall, with those 39 sophomores I told you about, 38 are the College Center students and 1 at River Bluff. 219 juniors and 445 seniors are taking at least 1 dual enrollment course right now in our district. And so there's an area, the junior class too, that we can find, and Dr. Little and I talked about this months ago, where we work closely with those sophomores when they're doing their IGPs to say, hey, based on your data, you qualify, you're eligible for dual enrollment courses. Let's find ways to make sure you understand that and that you can make those course requests to start your junior year as opposed to them starting their senior year, which is not a terrible thing, but if we can get you started earlier and get more courses under your belt and get that experience, your transition from secondary to post-secondary is going to be much smoother.
Our dual enrollment offerings, how many of those are in a virtual platform, percentage-wise, roughly?
Percentage-wise, maybe half.
Okay.
And so what many of the high schools are doing is they're providing lab space during the day where there's a proctor, maybe a teacher that would have had a planning period or something, or somebody's monitoring that class, where students are, on their MacBooks and they got earphones plugged in and they're either in a virtual course or they're in that online course taking those classes. So I'd probably say it's about half because of with the high community spread right now, not having a whole bunch of extra people, many extra people coming into the school.
Sure.
So it's about, but what really helps and what we want to find more of in our high schools is the affiliate instructors. Typically, instructors need a master's degree plus 18 credit hours in that discipline to be approved to teach a particular course. And so we know there's a lot of untapped potential at our high schools, and what the affiliate instructors will allow us to do is it creates much more flexibility in the master schedule. Because you're not trying to plug in a course into a particular slot in time, because that's when the adjunct can come in. You can build it around the people who are already in your building. And so that's an area we definitely want to look to expand from this year to next school year.
And outside of course offering or course availability, I should say, there's no real cap that exists on dual enrollment.
No, the university and college partners do ask us to have at least a section of about 12. So as long as we have a minimum of 12, we can have a specific Lexington one or that high school's cohort. If there are fewer than 12, they can even plug them into combined sections across the district, or sometimes we get plugged in with neighboring districts of high school students. We want to try to keep them in the high school student section just so instructors understand that they are still high school students. But if some students take an advanced coursework, sometimes, there's higher level math like a calculus, they may be combined into a general Midland Technical College section. So they're very flexible in working with us on that.
So you
for both USC Sumter and Midland Tech.
Sure. So you probably see where I'm going with this, is that in a platform such as this, where at least half of, or we'll say half, is through a virtual platform, you're able to demonstrate a savings to the state of $2.7 million without a cap. That's kind of an interesting dichotomy that exists between what we were talking about earlier.
One area, as you mentioned, that one area that we must consider as a district is that as those numbers grow, the manpower has to grow, because it takes a lot of time and effort to coordinate the application process, the transcript process, getting standardized test scores to the universities, getting paperwork to the university. It takes a lot of time. And right now, we're a very limited department, which is 2, myself and the person we just hired. And so as that number grows, and I'm also overseeing the College Center and the AVID programs that are at 7 of our schools, we can do it, but we just need the human resources to be able to do that effectively and to make sure it's a quality program.
Fantastic work. Really, really great stuff.
Thank you.
Now we're going to change gears just a little bit. These are 2 projects that don't necessarily fit in with our strategic plan, but have been things we've been working on and have made some tremendous progress over the last couple of years. And so I'd like to introduce Coach David Bennett, who's as you know, our district-wide athletic director. Coach, thank you for being here tonight. You're going to walk us through really an ongoing project that we've had in our middle schools.
Sure, I'm going to try to. Learn how to work this thing here. Thank you to the board for all your time and efforts for our kids. because y'all put in a lot of time into our SLT, and Jeff Salters used to be over athletics, and we restructured, and now it's Chief Caldwell, and they provide great leadership, and they enjoy athletics. You know, to me, and being in athletics for a long, long time, I think there are lessons that are learned that we carry with us for the rest of our life in athletics. Where this middle school conference began, it came from Dr. Little. You know, when we built Beechwood, he said, it's like the old ACC. We got 8 teams. We can do our own conference. Well, the PAC, the old middle school conference, y'all probably know, Dr. Geit, when you probably played, it was the PAC. And anyway, that was with the schools towards West Columbia and the schools across the dam. And so we started talking about forming our own conference. They got a little bit upset, and we let them keep their money, started our own. They wanted us to pay a fine, but we didn't do it. We didn't have to do that. So you're talking about putting skin in the game. Everybody talks about putting skin in the game, getting involved. Well, Coach Hammer came up with a logo. Dr. Little didn't like the number 10. He wanted 8 teams. And we got to give credit to Brantley Foxworth, a young leader at Beechwood. As we met with the ADs, he came up with the idea, let's invite Batesburg, Leesville, and Sandhills to be a part. So we've got two conferences within the big conference. It's called the North and the South. The North are the bigger 5 middle schools. The South are the smaller 5 by enrollment. We also look at geographic location. I want to show you here, we do some professional development. We've got a coaches academy for our young coaches that we put them with a mentor. We brought in the guy that wrote the book called 3D Coaching, Jeff Duke, fed all our coaches back in 18, and then had the presentation. Unbelievable book where he talks about coaching kids that you need to coach their body, their mind, and their heart, all 3. So we brought him in, and he used to be on Bobby Bowden's staff. It was great. Well, had the great idea to bring in some folks. That's Kim Pate, the AD from Lenore-Ryan. Y'all know Chief Caldwell. Megan Assey used to be with us. She told a phenomenal story about building relationships with kids. Darrell Nance, Greenville County AD, and Dr. Little and Jeff Salters participated in this as well. You know, you go to conventions and people get up there and talk for 45 minutes, and you might get 2 nuggets. We told them they had 5 to 7 minutes to bring a strong nugget or 2. So we love doing that. And get through this COVID, we can get to feed them and do that again with our coaches. If you'll see to the left, this was our very first year where we had the Lex 10. Now I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, we're a work in progress. We're getting better every single year. As Dr. Little likes to say, we're going to the next level. He says, Coach, we're going to the next level? I said, yes, sir.
That picture's pre-COVID, by the way, just so you.
This was I'll tell you what we learned. We're learning lessons, okay? We had the first volleyball jamboree. It was at Meadowglen Middle, and it's supposed to start at 5:30. I don't know if y'all know Candace Cobb. She's now at River Bluff coaching basketball. Love some Candace Cobb. Candace was all fired up. She's hosting it. Guess what time we started the jamboree? 5:15. We started 15 minutes early. As those parents started rolling in there, Dr. Powers, you roll in there and your girl's already playing, you're gonna be a little upset. Probably fielded more phone calls after that jamboree than any other thing we've done. So you start on time. We learned that valuable lesson. We're growing. We got Pillion basketball, C. Gilbert basketball when we first started. And now our whole goal is to increase participation. We want to have 7th grade teams along with the middle school team. So in volleyball, instead of 15 girls, go and keep 7 more and go 22 or 8 more, go up to 24. More kids get to be involved. And what's happened over these 3 years, we've averaged 2 teams in each sport, having a 7th grade team, to year 2, 4, to this year, 6. 6 of our 8, keeping 7th graders. You know, when we first started out, we were cutting football kids. 75 trying out at this middle school and cutting 35 of them and only keeping 40. Let all those kids come out. Football, y'all know, is tough enough. We don't need to cut those kids. Our participation in the last 2 years has gone up 30%. which is what we want. Picture at the top, another valuable lesson we learned. That's the championship game. Chief Caldwell, Dr. Little giving out the trophies, and they'll tell you that got real competitive that night. As we were playing, it was Gilbert playing Pleasant Hill, and they're playing for the Lexington Championship. Dr. Little touched it, breathed it, everything. And so we talked that night. I said, Coach, I think it'd be great to have a North champion and a South champion, and then they play like a Super Bowl for the Lexington Championship. So let me tell you, if some teams already won their trophy for the North and the South, they're more friendly competing rather if there's only one trophy. So we can get another trophy. And we did that. But Pleasant Hill, probably the best middle school team I've ever eyeballed in all my years. Beechwood, they've won the volleyball the first 2 years. And Meadow Glen beat them, I think, the other night. And White Knoll Middle, what a great job John Paul Sellers has done there. And now he's going to coach the girls team at White Knoll. As our teams start growing, Meadow Glen Middle won the Debbie Rogers, which is the middle school state championship, which was unbelievable. Again, Pleasant Hill team, best middle school team I've laid eyes on. And Gilbert, look how Gilbert's numbers are growing. That's Gilbert Middle School. They've got even more out there this year. Neat thing here, Carolina Springs girls basketball team went undefeated. They won the North, they won the big side. And then they played somebody for the South, so the South champion, it was Gilbert. So we had 2 champions and then an overall champion. And we learned that after year 1 as we continue to go to the next level. Lexington Middle, y'all know Mike Stratton, real good science teacher over there. He'll about wear your nerves out, but I love him. He's a great guy. And they won the small division and won the overall thing. I said, quit whining about being in the small division. White Knoll Middle, volleyball. And look how our numbers are growing at White Knoll Middle School. More kids. We're not cutting kids, and that's what we want. We want them to all to compete and have 2 champions. The reason I got this picture in there, I think athletics is fun. Like Brandon said, we get to work with kids and coaches. That's a dream job. Yeah, there's always some bumps in the road, but it's a dream job. And we need to have fun with athletics. Dr. Little, I'm gonna brag on Dr. Little. You know, he was a basketball coach when he came out of college. And he says, Coach, that's a blessing and a curse. And it is, because he knows just enough about athletics to be dangerous. But love being at ball games and seeing Dr. Little there. I will share this. In the 38 years, I've been blessed to be a part of teaching and coaching. 6 college presidents through the years and 4 superintendents. And I don't know anybody better than that guy right there. His passion and love for the kids, academics, arts, and athletics, unparalleled. And we're blessed to have his leadership. Any questions?
Coach Bennett, where do you see it growing? So I think we were talking about football, we've talked about volleyball. Is basketball's in the mix currently?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
and the first 2 schools to do it were Lexington Middle and Beechwood. You know,
so they both got trophies.
Sir?
So they both got trophies.
Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. They were the first 2 in year 1, 19, to have a 7th grade team. So they had about, you got 15 and 7, 22 kids on the basketball team. And I try to tell them to do 2 Wednesday nights and 2 Saturdays. Well, like I say, Stratton, he can be a little hard-headed. They went 4 Saturday mornings, so I got mamas wanting to know, why are we going every Saturday? So the 7th graders met up and played each other. And just this past year was the first time we had a 7th grade championship. So it's just growing. It just keeps growing every year and getting better and better.
Just think that is a very tough age, and to surround those kids with families outside of their biological parents or whatever parents, as well as teachers, is important. So
Yes,
thank
sir.
you.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all for the opportunity.
I echo what you were saying. My son is a 7th grader, and it's been really just awesome to see even things like, Mom, I don't need to drink any soft drinks right now. So a health aspect of it, and then the friends aspect of it, and just having other men just pouring into him. So thank you for
Yep.
doing that.
Well, and if I could just add, because again, I know a little enough to be dangerous. When you have a place, Meadow Glen Middle School is a great example. 1,200 kids. Who knows how many come out for basketball? But then the difference between a 7th grader and an 8th grader, by definition, is leaps and bounds. So they are competing. A 7th grader, for example, really has the deck stacked against him, and we're going to move into girls basketball as well. I don't know if we're there yet, but we're working on that piece. When you dig into that, I mean, the chances that a 7th grade boy is going to, or a girl makes the team is incredibly daunting because of just the biological aspects of being in middle school and the differences in development. So it provides them an opportunity to participate, to grow, get the coaching that they need. It's going to eventually impact our high school programs. This year in football, for example, White Knoll Middle has 67 students. Carolina Springs Middle has 70 students on their middle school teams. I think Beechwood Middle has like 2,000. I'm not sure the exact number, but it's close
Coach
to that.
Hammer, he's got 84.
He's got 84
kids.
at Beechwood Middle. These students will eventually matriculate to our high school programs, and I promise they'll contribute, and it's going to make us all better across the board. But for us, and that'll be the athletic thing, and that's great. I mean, everybody wants to win, and that's going to be fantastic. But really the heart of this is what Ms. Henson just said, which is you're connecting kids to their school. Our middle schools are better when those 35 kids don't get cut. Our middle schools are better when you have more leaders and more commitment and more connection across the board, across those programs.
I would even argue that we would see improvements in our education when our students are plugged into things that bring them joy.
No doubt about it.
I'm going to take that a step further because if you don't mind, through attrition, we will lose those students, but we have a bigger pool to lose from. And my goal has always been, and I missed it with my own children, I want them 40 years from now to say I was a Gator and I still am a Gator, or I was a Wildcat. And that's, I think, being plugged into something that's larger than they are, that they can contribute to, is huge. And the more students we can have at this level and the more we can grow this middle school program, the better our chances are to continue to grow the programs at the high school level. And again, we do love to win, but it's about the growth of the student, the growth of the athlete, and the growth of the program. So I appreciate what Coach Bennett and his staff are doing.
And I'll add that seventh and eighth graders both, 7th graders especially, they really don't like their parents' advice or.
Coach said they're gonna listen to coach.
They don't, and to have, another influence, I've got to, Coach said I need to make sure I study and keep my grades up. Coach told me I need to be, I can't be late anymore. The coach asked, was I on time today? I mean, that sort of thing, having, all these voices, like Ms. Henson said, pouring into these kids and providing extra layers of accountability for them in those times when they're probably not listening to their parents very much, but they're doing something that they love, and so they're going to listen to those role models, and I think that's really important.
And a lot can happen, and Dr. Little mentioned it, a lot can happen from 7th to 8th grade. And if you're getting a chance to participate, you ought to see Pleasant Hill now. He's got a green team and a gold team. At Lexington, they're calling them the blue and the gold team. They're not calling them middle school and 7th grade team. It's really pretty cool. And so it's just going to keep growing, getting better. And thank y'all for allowing us to do it.
Well, too, and they have choice now. When we were coming up through there really wasn't choice. Now you're seeing so many different leagues and systems pop up that they have choice. And so the more we can offer, the more we can keep things kind of homegrown. To this day, I still maintain contact. Johnny Thompson, Tommy Williams, they still terrify me till this day. Tommy Williams more than Johnny Thompson.
Tommy's really a softie.
You know, I still
He's
wake
really
up
a softy.
I wake up in cold sweats, you know, thinking about running a rabbit again. And, but it is something that sticks with you, you know, throughout the years. And these are men I can reach out to today, and I have. And, you know, you can't really put a price tag on that relationship or that opportunity, I think is sort of the take home.
And I'll tell you what's growing like crazy too is lacrosse. It's just unbelievable how it's growing, and it's great for the kids too. Any more questions?
Thank you, Coach. Appreciate
Thank
it.
y'all.
Finally tonight, we're going to end kind of the way we started by talking about the wonderful people of our district and their impact. One of the things I'm most proud of this year, and Kimberly, I don't mean to step on any of your thunder here, but one of the things I'm most proud of this year was how this board and this leadership team prioritized our employees and went above and beyond to connect with them and acknowledge the difficulties that they faced throughout last year and continue to face this year. But so I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about how our district really intentionally worked on employee support. And I believe, and again, let HR kind of talk about it, but I believe it also helped us in our recruitment efforts this year, where other districts did not maybe do some of the same things we did. And this is the kind of work that teachers talk about to other people and to bring these really incredible high-quality professionals to our district. So, Ms. Freeman, go ahead and kick us off.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Little, and thank you to the members of the board for allowing me to be with you tonight. As I've listened throughout the evening, as a student of Lexington One, as an employee now of Lexington One, and as a parent of students in this district, it's really been a little bit overwhelming to think about what our employees have done the past 16 months. You know, having been in the gig here for a little while and lived through some challenging experiences, nothing has prepared me personally or professionally for what we've walked through these past months. And I believe that to be true for probably the vast majority of our employees who continue to show up every day and do the very best that they can for our students, regardless of all that is swirling around them. And I bring you thanks tonight for the way that you continue to support and encourage our employees, and just want to celebrate some of what we've been able to do to hold hands and walk alongside of folks through the last few months. As you know, there's some sort of hallmark things that happened over the last year that were really, I think, tremendous for our employees. So, for example, our board members approved a one-time payment to our employees last December of $1,000 to our full-time employees, $500 to employees working less than 30 hours a week, and then the $500 for subs who worked 45 days each semester. And that was an incredible, I think, gesture and just statement of gratitude and support for our employees, and something that we certainly heard, and I hope you did as well, a lot of thanks for. But there were also some continued measures in place across the year that we wanted to highlight this year, and one of the ones that I think has been incredibly significant is this idea of thinking really strategically about extended leave for employees across the pandemic. So as you know, the leave began under the Families First Coronavirus Response Act with the emergency paid sick leave provision. It was that 80 hours for most employees, right? It was that leave that was given under that federal legislation that began in April of 2020. And so we began at that time to start tracking that leave and walking with employees who were excluded based on their own COVID symptoms, based on quarantine requirements due to a close contact exposure, based on folks in their house. The original FFCRA had some components for people who were caring for someone under a quarantine or an isolation order. So that was in place from April the 1st through December, 31st of 2020, right? At the end of December, when that particular act sunsetted, we saw that coming and were unsure of what the federal government would do, whether or not that might be extended. And so our board made a decision to act, and we appreciate that, to extend that leave through June the 30th. And so we extended some components of FFCRA, particularly related to an employee's own isolation or quarantine status. And so again, we continued to work with employees under that leave. And so that was in place through June the 30th. In the spring of 2021, we were extremely grateful to have the opportunity for employees to pursue a COVID-19 vaccine if they decided to do that. And again, we're able to support that with some strategic leave for employees who experience experience side effects as a result of the vaccine. And so throughout that school year, as employees had close contact exposures, not just in their personal lives, but professionally to students and staff through the essential functions of their job, we also supported them with a district-based leave so that that would protect their annual leave and their COVID leave across that. So in all those ways, we were able to navigate those extended leave opportunities. We made it our goal to reach out to each employee as quickly and compassionately as possible to walk through what was very often a scary situation and help folks navigate that across the semester, the spring semester, all right? And so that was the leave that was in place through June 30th. We also developed during that time, thanks to Mr. Salters and some other members of our senior leadership team, a partnership with Nephron, which has enabled us to support our employees through quick, free, drive-through rapid testing across the pandemic, so that when our employees do experience symptoms or are looking for a test to potentially end a quarantine early, we're able to support them in that. That was really important in the beginning when it was very hard to find a test. It became something that didn't feel quite as urgent for a few months, and boy, are we back to being really thankful for that partnership with Nephron again, as it is hard for employees sometimes to find tests in other places. So that extended leave was one way that we were able to support employees and are still able to do so and are so thankful for that. Another thing the district was able to do is to think really strategically about childcare for our employees when their children were not on campus for a scheduled school day. So particularly thinking back to that hybrid model last year, if my children were scheduled to be e-learning, then the district provided a childcare opportunity for them so that I was able to still keep coming to work, right? It was essential that we provide opportunities for our employees as parents so that they could continue to serve their students in both cohorts. And so we had about 1,000 employee children who were a part of our childcare program at some point during the year last year. That was from pre-K through 8th grade students. And they went to their home school and were served by members of that school staff, instructional assistants, secretaries, housekeepers, food service. We all jumped in to spend time with our children and support their e-learning, which was really a great, not only opportunity for us to be able to serve our employees and their families, but also to build some really neat relationships across our sites and across our faculties. So that was an exciting way to serve our students, our employees. One of the things that was really a ball that was already rolling that I think we probably couldn't have anticipated how important it would become is this last thing that I want to share with you, which is our employee assistance program. So the district entered into a relationship with Deer Oaks Employee Assistance Program, which is a free service provided to all employees and their families. And so through our EAP, we are able to connect our employees with counseling services, with referrals. So it's short-term counseling with Deer Oaks. They will help connect you to longer-term counseling services when that's needed, financial planning, and a whole slew of other services that they provide. And so through this confidential program, so as an employer, we don't know when folks reach out to Deer Oaks. That's not the intent, right? But we're able to connect employees in crisis to the Deer Oaks group, and then they're able to connect them to the resources that they need. That's confidential and free, and it's very easy to access through a website and an app. So there are lots of ways for our employees to reach out. And so when we're working with somebody and they're in some sort of situation where they might need some support, we try to be really intentional about putting this service in front of them and just continuing to get the word out. It is new, and it is something our employees are still learning about, they're still experiencing, and they're still developing an understanding of. But it is a program that we are very thankful for. So I just can't say enough tonight how thankful we are for the lift that our employees have done over the past months, and for the ways that everybody in this room has been really purposeful about supporting them. So thank you for that, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
We have an EAP program at the hospital, and it also has been well used, so it was great the district did that.
It really is exciting.
So for that EAP thing, counseling, what are some other examples that employees would need to use this for?
So it really is a lot about connecting to different services and resources that might exist. So a lot of it's, the big buckets that it centers around are counseling services, either mental health counseling for an employee or a family member, family counseling, or connecting to those resources, financial planning, which includes like help finding services that might be out there to support rent and electricity and some of those kinds of programs. So they do a really nice job of trying to connect employees directly to those services. Basically, you call, you have a conversation with the folks at the, whoever answers in their call center. They get some information from you and get back in touch with you in about 24 to 48 hours, for example, with a list of available counseling services that are all going to work with your insurance. So they vet that for the employee. And they'll even go so far as, like, if I were to say, I would prefer to have an afternoon counseling slot between this and this time, they will send me a list of counselors who have availability during that time. So they do a lot of that initial legwork so that when I'm connecting, I can kind of cut to the chase and go connect with somebody who would be able to help me.
Mr. Salters, we added the EAP to the budget in 2019, is that correct?
It was this past year.
So the 2020 budget?
For the 2020, 2021.
Yeah, for this past year.
Okay. I'm just thinking, like you said, Ms. Freeman, a little bit, that's a great example. Y'all added it to the budget as a recommendation for us and the board approved it. And we didn't know at the time how important it was going to be. And so I think that's a good lesson for us, or, thank goodness you did, because clearly it is something that we didn't know we were going to need, but somebody knew we were going to need it.
Amen.
And so I think that is a very important thing to keep in mind as we, when that sometimes we plan based not on current need, but on future need. And especially when you're dealing with a large staff like we have, and students, just anticipating what might be down the road is so important. And I'm just very grateful that we had that in place for our staff.
And on that note, I would challenge us as we continue to look at the ESSER funding and how we can source that. Think about it through the lens of our employees, not just our students, support services for employees. And again, the hospital's full of codes, but we just started a code lavender. And what that is for a unit or a group of nurses and doctors who've either had multiple difficult patient care events in that day, or because of staffing shortages or call-outs or COVID illnesses among the team, can initiate it. And it's a bundle of resources. And food's the simplest thing, but additional attention from administrative as well as HR leadership to that group. And then the other thing, and again, you got to be careful because, I would love it every night, but we now allow our directors and above to identify managers who've gone above and beyond, and then we DoorDash food to their whole family that night, because a lot of times they're not getting home. So again, wherever within the law, in the confines, thinking about wraparound services we can give our teachers and our assistant principals and principals at schools coming from the district level, and y'all would have to adjudicate it, I think makes sense, because it's just another way to say we're with you and we care about you.
Absolutely. All right, well, if you don't have any other questions, Dr. Little, I think that's it for me.
Thank you very much, Ms. Freeman. And on that note, board, that is the end of our presentations. Thank you for your patience and for your questions. And again, I want to thank the directors and SLT for their work in getting all this together when I realized the days have been busy. And of course, right after a long weekend is also a challenge. So thank you, everyone, for the work that you've done, and board, thank you for the opportunity to present all this information tonight. So that's all I got.
Can I add, so I want to thank you for this format, because again, this has been a very good format, so thank you. And then Jeff Caldwell, and please extend our thanks to Amy Woods and her team. We didn't talk about the health wraparound that's happened this past year, but that has been an immense amount of work, so thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Always an extremely informative update, and we certainly have had a lot going on for the last year, and I appreciate all of your hard work. And really, at this time, all of our staff, from Dr. Little to our everyone in this room and that works in this building, and our school level administrators and our teachers and all the support staff and the transportation and food service. I mean, everybody is just, to say it's, they're lifting more than their share is really is an understatement, because there's just so much hard work going on right now. And I, for one, very truly appreciate every ounce of effort that's being put in on behalf of our staff and our students. I would like to mention, I failed to at the beginning, just for your information, Dr. Guyton did serve as our secretary throughout this meeting, and so thank you, Dr. Guyton, for that. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Do I have a second? Thank you, Ms. Henson. All in favor? And the motion carries. Thank you very much. Drive safe.